Does everybody want to know a secret? I'm pregnant.
Yay!
Are you really?
Yes. Thanks, guys. No, it's real. I think you knew.
All that weight you lost.
So you
I know.
Thank you. I worked very hard to make this all happen.
High five, dude. I know you guys have been trying for a while.
Every day.
You look very...
You've been puking every day. Ew.
Every single day.
They didn't have shark assholes under it with 8 dicks
Because
going
I have
into
a
that.
vagina.
Oh, because you don't want your dick to just fly off. Previously on Furk'd in the Bed.
Penis. I don't know about anything.
It's better if it goes straight in. So like,
Because sometimes when it goes in at an angle, it kind of...
The medium of podcasting and that sort of thing is a little narcissistic.
Yeah, that's true. Did you guys do drugs while you were reading the book?
I'm just like, how do you live on a wall? But I like when she tells Dylan that she's been living on a wall. And he's just kind of like, far out. You know, that's pretty much it.
yeah, cross your arms. Cross your arms. We don't. No one wants to see giant tits. More than once I've said that.
I kind of think my cover's the best, if I had to choose.
That's a good one.
I like that the best.
It looks more
Richard
like
Hell
a,
is so
like
sexy.
That's my second.
This
one's...
bullshit.
Yeah, what? It doesn't even have the feel of...
Doesn't even have the real Ramones on there.
I went on their website. Hold on to your buttholes. This might get weird.
Salutations. You're for some reason listening to Furk'd in the Burt, a voyage to Uranus. What is wrong with you? Stop now. This is a podcast by Portland, Oregon's worst band, Molly Bang, who would rather yak about music than actually rehearse. Shit. All of you, stop now. This is a podcast by Portland, Oregon's worst band, Molly Bang, who would rather yak about music than actually rehearse. Shit. Salutations. You're for some reason listening to Furk'd in the Burt, a voyage to Uranus. What is wrong with you? Stop now. This is a podcast by Portland, Oregon's worst band, Molly Bang, who would rather yak about music than actually rehearse. You're for some reason listening to Furk'd in the Burt, a voyage to Uranus.
Congrats, Joe. Do you guys have a name yet?
Untitled might be a good name.
Yeah. Eponymous.
Working title?
I knew a pair of twins called Terry and Tori.
If you have twins, can you abort one and save the other?
Actually,
We had a friend that did it with
yes.
triplets. They got rid of one.
Really?
Yeah.
Usually it's because there's a problem.
Their problem was they were scared shitless.
So I was joking, but you can do that?
Yeah.
Can you choose which one? Look at the thing
Well,
and be
I
like...
know that in the cases
I'll
that
take those two.
okay, there's a boy and the girl. I want to get rid of the boy. No, when there's medical problems, they can do it.
Can they duel it out? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Technology that makes them duel it out.
That's right. The fight to the death.
strongest
There's
one
some
wins.
species of sharks that eat the other babies when they're still in the mother's belly, and they start with 20 and they end up with only 1 or 2 coming out, and then they're fully developed, just really small, and they've already eaten multiple meals. Yeah. Fucked up, man. Then there's also disappearing twin syndrome, where they test you the first time and you're pregnant with multiples, and then they test you later and you're only pregnant with 1.
Because the other one got absorbed.
Yeah.
Does that mean they'll have extra nipples?
Or maybe extra nipples. Did you know you can get
Or a
nipples on the
face
bottom
in
of
the
your
back
feet?
of your hair.
I've heard about that.
You have a mammary line that runs from the bottom of your feet all the way to your armpits.
What about that zipper between my asshole and balls, known as the taint?
Or
Well,
the hairy
that's actually
Jane.
where your labia come together and create the ball sack when
Yes,
you're
that's
developed.
That's right. The fleshy fun bridge.
The fleshy fun bridge, yes. Because when we start out, we're all girls.
Formerly known as the taint, now known as the gooch.
Did you make that up?
The fleshy fun bridge. What is
That's
that
really
from?
good.
From Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, the taint, the grundle,
I thought you were
the
going to
fleshy
say that's
fun
from a
bridge.
cartoon.
That's what I thought
It's
you were
from Barney, I think. I love fun bridges.
This episode, Molly Bang reads the first half of Please Kill Me, the uncensored oral history of punk, written by Legs McNeil and Gillian McCain, published 1996. This is part 1 of 2. Now join us on this voyage to Uranus. Also, Furk you. Now here is a song by me, from the album I Hide My Lighter in a Teddy Bear Sometimes, now on Bandcamp. Please kill me.
We don't have much fun. We don't get along. Drink a lot of pop. We don't get along. I wanna say what's hurting me. I want you, please kill me. My heart and mind don't collide. They don't really mind. That's really kind. But when they do, they don't let me to. And I'm just reading notes you threw at me. Please kill me.
What do you got, Dave?
Manhattan. Since we're reading about New York.
That's right.
I should also make an LA and a Detroit.
Uh-huh.
Well, Detroit's just gasoline and everything.
Yeah,
right?
and oil. Yeah, 30 weight.
Well, and you could also do, Iggy's Kahlua and milk.
Are we rolling?
Yeah, we've been rolling for a while.
So about that Kahlua and milk, I was like, you spend your per diem on 20 Kahluas and milk? Why don't you just go and buy a bottle of Kahlua and a gallon of milk, right?
Who is he? The Big Lebowski?
Because he's icky.
Yeah.
Has he ever done anything?
Thought of anything? That's, yeah, exactly.
Has he had any forethought?
I was thinking about that on the way over here, though. I was like, God, he spent his per diem on that when he could have just, gotten a whole jug of Kahlua.
And he was the smartest out of all of them, apparently.
He read, right? I mean, I love Angela Bowie's quote in there in the book where she's like, Lou Reed didn't read. Iggy really read the books. He had two teachers who were parents, and they lived in a trailer home by choice, not because of economic reasons, because it was kind of futuristic, cutting edge.
Trailer of the future.
Tiny homes before they were cool.
Yeah.
I think in the documentary, the Gimme Danger one, he talks about how he convinced his parents to move out of the one bedroom in the trailer, and then he set up in there with his drum set as a child and played drums.
In their in their bedroom, right?
Yeah.
But he had a real jazz drum teacher early on, right? He was the real musician. I love how the beginning starts out, all the Ashtons and everybody else in the entire book were just delinquents.
And Ron Ashton was the guy who had to babysit all the wasted people in the book.
Oh, I loved those.
Everyone was high except for me. Lou Reed gave us mandrakes, and, I pretended to take mine, and then I just babysit.
So when the book starts, I like the first paragraph where it talks about Lou Reed would pose for tabloids. Mm-hmm. And the first time his picture came up, he was a sex maniac killer. When I first read this book the first time, this is my second time through, I was like, I made a good decision in reading this.
Killed 14 children and tape recorded it. Yeah.
This is my second time through, too, and I forgot a lot of it.
It's so dense.
Forgot Lou was inviting people to, shit on him, or on a plate, or,
Yeah, so you don't want to shit in my mouth. Will you shit on a plate?
So you forget.
That was a really funny story. Do you remember which guy it was?
I thought it was a woman that he met.
Yeah, the woman that he was trying to take back to the hotel, and she kept turning him down, and he's like, well, what if you shit in my mouth? Does that sound dirty to you? She's like, no. Well, what if you shit on a plate over my mouth? No.
She was really disappointed, but to me, that would... If I met Lou Reed, that's how I would want it to go. Is him asking me to shit on a plate.
Anything less would be disappointing.
It's Duncan Hannah, but in drag. I don't know. Let me check the...
One thing about this whole book is I thought it was awesome that they took this whole punk scene back to the Velvet Underground. Because I've never made that connection. But it totally works when he lays it out. 100%.
Well, Lou was the godfather of punk, right? Or was that Iggy?
Yeah, and the fact that, Lou Reed was there at Max's and CBGB's from the get-go. He was the early mainstay kind of guy that was just always in the audience for whatever reason, because he's rich and bored in New York. I don't know why.
That was
Lou
crazy
Reed.
to me that
he's just being Lou Reed.
There's no crowd. It's Lou Reed and a few people at Max's and the Ramones.
And the Dead Boys. I didn't realize how integrated the Dead Boys were, how important they were to that early scene.
Yeah.
I always knew about Richard Hell, but not about the Dead Boys.
Yeah, they seemed like they had a short and sweet career. But, I mean, any punk rocker would give anything to go back to that and sit with Lou Reed and watch the Ramones play a 18-minute set.
Before you shit in his mouth.
When the guys from Punk Magazine saw him at the bar, let's interview him for our first ever issue. So it's their first ever issue. It's their first time seeing the Ramones. And he's there. Yeah, if you could be a fly on the wall, if time traveling for tourism ever becomes a thing.
You're in.
Yeah.
What I loved about that part of that story was the woman who was part of Punk Magazine was just, you guys are idiots. That's the dumbest fucking interview in the world for a punk
What's
magazine.
What's your favorite type of cheeseburger or something?
I would like to go back in time and have Lou Reed basically abuse me, verbally abuse me, just play all these head games with me and just be verbally abusive, passive aggressive, You know, the whole 9 yards.
Slightly physically abusive.
Sounds pretty enjoyable.
He could slap me.
You're from New York State, so you're like, you kind of got it. Pussies from the Pacific Northwest wouldn't be able to put up with that.
Lou went to Syracuse.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He went to Syracuse, yeah. He studied with the famous fiction writer and teacher Delmore Schwartz.
The other thing I like about the oral history, Scott, you were talking about that format, is I love the fact that because it's an oral history, some people admit they don't remember it correctly. Some people are 100%, this is exactly how it happened. And then the next person they interview is, that's wrong.
Yeah.
There were these intersecting parts, right, where somebody's got their story and then all of a sudden somebody else comes in. They're telling the same story from their perspective. That's really great about this book.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, the Elton John showing up in a gorilla suit scene. I actually typed that out and sent it to Joe. Elton John shows up, grabs him by the top of his head, and he's screaming because he doesn't realize that it's not a real gorilla.
So I guess my whole takeaway from this early on is that there is a lot of heroin and a lot of fucking 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking.
Especially in the first half. MC5 and Iggy Pop. And was there anyone of consensual age in the groupie list that they were banging?
15, 16 to me is not as, child and innocence as 13 and 14 is absolutely still a child. You could potentially not be done beginning puberty at that point and to be thrown into just, heroin and banging a different dude every night. I mean, of course, this was pre-AIDS, so you could fuck everybody.
It wasn't
and
pre-scruples.
Okay. It wasn't pre-clap. We know that for sure.
Yeah, that was the one that John liked so much.
Malcolm McLaren, when he goes to New York, this is a nasty country. It's kind of dirty here. And he keeps getting the clap over and over again when he's in the United States, and he has to clean up before he goes back to his wife.
He just keeps getting pissed off about the STDs he keeps getting.
That's hilarious.
Was it Iggy that pulls down his pants at one point and he's like, can you tell me what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And he squeezes his dick and green pus comes out and he's like, oh, that's the clap. Yeah. The fact that they were so used to getting it that they were showing each other their junk to diaghnose.
Nico gave that to him, right?
Yeah, John and I talked about that
at
in
the
our
Funhouse.
show. When I imagine that, I imagine it like flattening a tube of toothpaste from the bottom to the top. That's how I imagine squeezing that out.
I'm very curious where it came out.
A little commercial tube of toothpaste.
Had a little curl.
Yeah, had a curl at the end.
Your dog's weird, man.
That dog is very weird.
She was licking my pants, and then she went over and licked his pants.
Yeah, well, you guys got tasty pants.
Dirty pant licker.
I don't ever wash my pants, so that might be part of it.
Steak juice, other sorts of juices on your pants.
That Iggy story where he's dating, I think her name's Betsy. She's 13 or 14, and I was friends with her parents. They were very accepting.
They were very liberal
of our relationship. There's a song by him called Dog Food. Have you guys ever heard that? It's on,
No.
Yeah.
Of course.
So it's my girlfriend Betsy. She's just 14. 14. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's about her.
Dog food?
I'm hanging around.
You haven't
that
learned
same
dog
old
food?
Scene.
I don't know.
I don't think I have.
Which album?
It's in the outtakes of Raw Power. In the old
I've
days,
heard
it was on the Tight Pants EP. In vinyl years, I don't know what it's on.
I have
now.
it on vinyl. I'm trying to think of the...
It's a great song.
It is, yeah.
Quintessential Iggy song.
Yep.
Loose is one of my favorites.
Loose. Well, when I had answered the Craigslist ad for Molly Bang, you're like, go online and check us out. And I found you singing No Fun. And
oh, yeah.
It was great because Maxine's crawling all over you the whole time you're singing it. And the other one you did was the Ticky Tacky. What's the name of that song?
Ticky Tacky?
Yeah.
Is it the Weeds theme song?
Oh, Little Boxes.
Little Boxes. That's the name. That's,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, I want to be in this band.
That's a fun song. We should play that again.
Yeah, I really
it's
like
so
that
great.
song.
Little Boxes.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's the only thing I remember about that show, actually.
Hey, stop licking me.
What a
That's the
slut.
first time I would say. I've never thought I would say that. Stop licking me.
Trying to do some stuff here.
13-year-old girls, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It can't be that bad.
Yeah.
But that is bad. That and the random violence against people who aren't involved. Do whatever you want to your own body.
New York City was just a total shithole. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, I remember the city went bankrupt, and basically President Ford was, "Fuck you. We're not bailing you out." No one cared, and it was just dirty, and people were junkies, obviously, like in the book.
Well, the amount of just blatant on the side of the road drug use of being in line around the block to pick up heroin, and that it was that open and that normal, that it wasn't just junkies. When he was saying that, you know, it was delivery men and waitresses and nurses and everybody was doing it, and it was just out in the open, the little Puerto Rican kids running it.
Yeah, I totally thought that was a dramatization when Alex Cox did that Sid and Nancy movie. But man, it's spelled out exactly like that in this book.
Yeah.
As far as I know, no one went to the Bowery or, you know, down in Lower Manhattan ever. You know, I mean, it was just dangerous and crappy and just nasty. And so why would you go there?
Well, to pick up hookers.
Or score drugs. So
Yeah.
that's the type of people that were all down there. People who are trying to score drugs, you know, scam artists, regular artists, and hookers.
Speaking of hookers, gay for pay, didn't know that was really a thing. Totally thought that was just if you were gay for pay, you just hadn't figured out you were gay yet. I'll only charge you $40 because I'm only going to let you suck my dick. Unless he had speed, then I'd let him fuck me.
That was Jim Carroll.
Jim Carroll.
But he wasn't a fag.
Two of my favorite people in this book are Dee Dee and Jim Carroll. They're the real deal.
Dee Dee's funny.
Hands down. I mean,
I
Dee
love
Dee's
the
awesome.
fact it's like, Dee Dee slept with everybody.
Dee Dee and
he
Connie.
slept with me, he slept with this guy, he slept with this girl, and he used to be a prostitute, so he made you feel good. It's like Dee Dee knew what he was doing.
Or when they were banging each other, one of them, they'd be banging, and then one guy would get up to leave, and the second guy would be, well, I haven't gotten off yet. And so he'd sit on my face while I jerked off, and it wasn't about love. It was just about getting off, and we weren't bags. I think if you're sitting on each other's faces, you might be gay. At least half.
I don't know.
I think they're just so fucked up. Let's feel
And
good.
bored.
Yeah. And bored. Yeah, and broke.
All right, it's 4 a.m. I'm totally fucked up, and there's a dude next to me, so this is better than nothing.
I know how this works.
Yep.
Sure, I guess so.
Is it like being in jail? I'm not gay, but there's just dudes around.
That's going gay for the state. That's not going gay for pay. That's a different terminology.
Totally different.
Wayne Kramer's just like, punk was a bad thing when I was in jail. William S. Burroughs in the book, punk somebody who takes it up the ass.
Right. Yeah.
They have
it
this
was no
whole
different.
long explanation of people talking about it, and then William S. Burroughs
And it was just like
has a
one line,
short-
right? Like, when I was a kid, punk was somebody who took it up
My
the
dad
ass.
said that when I was growing up and I first started to get into punk rock. Well, when I was a kid in the 50s, a punk was somebody who, like, you know, got fucked by other guys.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that heroin is dope, because I had always thought that dope just meant hard drugs that wasn't weed. And then one time I called the police in my first apartment because the crazy woman across the hall had kicked her door down and was in there screaming, "Somebody help me." And then when the police show up, the first thing they ask, "Are you guys smoking dope in there?" Like an hour before we'd smoked some weed in the apartment. There's a woman across the hall screaming for help, and you're asking me if I'm smoking dope. I don't even know what the fuck dope is.
Right.
In this book, it is only heroin.
Yeah.
Nothing
Coughing
else.
Dope sick is, you know, withdrawal. I think it's used in all different ways, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think
Smoking
they call
dope.
it dope?
Exactly.
Makes you
I'm a dope. I don't know what it means. It's a drug. I like this little bit. So it says, so we went to Danny's loft on 20th Street and smoked some hash. We were all looking around his house at all the pictures on the walls because he had photos of everyone. So I was pumping him for what they were like. I kept saying, well, what's Iggy like? He'd say, well, he's an asshole. Then I'd say, well, God, you must know everyone. Well, what's Wayne Kramer like? And he'd say, well, he's an asshole. All musicians are assholes. You know, he was like, why do you ask? Danny was looking at us saying, these people are jerks. I said, I know, but they're so great. And Danny said, of course they're great. They're the best. But they're just complete assholes.
That's kind of what I came away with for reading the book.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even the best of them were assholes.
Who's speaking there?
Duncan. But yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It is just so fun to me to read this book, but these people are the worst. You wouldn't want to hang out with them. You wouldn't
Not
want
for
to
a
be in
I'd
a
want to
band
make
with
some
them.
music with them, though.
I mean,
And then go home to a separate home.
Yeah.
Not go
Right.
live with them for months.
Squeeze my wiener like a toothpaste and see what comes out of it after I play some music with them.
You know, the last 2 books we've done, I've come away with it feeling like, God, all of these people are dicks. And I definitely felt that way about this one, but they felt more like human dicks. As opposed to just like, you know.
what do you like more, human dicks or regular dicks?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it before I said it.
prefer, Deb?
One time at work, someone
Possum dicks.
drew on a big paper towel a huge dick, a dick with a face and legs, and then
anthropomorphic penis.
And then the dick had a dick. So does that dick have a dick? The dick's dick have a dick?
Like
and so we got into this
in
really kind of intellectual conversation about it. And he did it with a permanent marker. And I was trying to explain about, so does that dick have a dick? How does it look? And he wasn't getting what I was saying. But yeah, if I turned it over, would you still be able to see the dick? And it was a permanent marker so you could see it on the other side. So it was just perfect.
Dick stick?
I think a lot of the people in the book, though, about their assholes, the Danny Fields thing, is a lot of them are kind of dead enders.
Yeah.
They're going to be like janitors, jail, basically.
They got really
I mean, they're
lucky
just,
that they were able to do something with the short period of time that they had. And I mean, how many of the people in these stories aren't alive anymore?
Right, I know. That's what when I was reading this, I was like, okay, so he's dead. When did this interview take place? You know, I mean, Johnny Thunders, he's been dead. This was published in what?
Steve Bader's
2000s or
90.
Yeah, right.
I just
Published
think
like way after the fact.
Going on the whole time, apparently. You know, from '76 or whenever punk was starting, he was into it.
He was in Cleveland in some kind of cover band for a while, and then went to New York.
Yeah, so the part of me that's like, oh man, these assholes, how dare they get so much out of life? And then I'd go and look them up and I'd be like, oh.
You wouldn't trade.
I wouldn't trade, no. And
Right.
especially when it's people who have, some of them kind of just got lucky and didn't actually have any talent. They just had a good attitude for the scene. They had a good style for the scene. They had the right body, the right face, the right voice, and they could just basically fuck off and do whatever the hell they wanted and succeed. Well, succeed still starving to death, but succeed. And how dare they when I have worked hard, but, I have a good job and I don't have a heroin addiction and my parents haven't disowned me and I don't have a criminal record. And
only one person sits on your face while you jack off.
Yeah, and he doesn't try to shit in my mouth.
Or on a plate.
Or on a plate.
Yet.
Are you talking about Joe?
Are we talking about Joe?
Maybe?
Somebody like Joey Ramone, if he wasn't in the Ramones, what other gig would he have going on?
Mm-hmm.
Could he really function in a day job, be a professional, or a lot of those people in the book, they couldn't do anything except
especially
for be
Joey Ramone
fucked up.
On the documentary End of the Century or whatever, where his brother's talking, he probably had Asperger's or some form of autism, and when he got on stage, he was a completely different person. The mom and the brother say, good thing he got famous, because somebody's going to have to take care of him.
Mm-hmm. Or Iggy's inability to go on stage half the time, or maybe half the time.
That wasn't performance anxiety, though. That was
excessive drug use. The gorilla scene, at that point, he's fucked on so many things and having to try new things to get high still. And that kind of drug addiction does not lend itself to a successful life. But if you're in a punk band, it's going to work.
Right? They all pointed to Keith Richards. Well, he's a junkie. Yeah, but he was famous first.
Yeah, and
like
then he
they all
became a junkie.
And he gets blood transfusions.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that help? You know all this stuff about...
He says it does.
Really?
I don't know how true it is, but...
I do, or...
No.
Keith, yeah.
Keith says it does. Yeah, he swears by it.
So he just keeps doing that.
I heard he was getting blood transfusions. That was the grapevine in the 70s and 80s. Wow. What about Patti Smith in the book? I was curious about how other people feel, because I have really strong feelings about Patti Smith, like negative.
When she's talking, I love her. When anybody else is talking about her, I hate her.
Yeah.
She has a very high opinion of herself, and she sells it well.
Was she the first Courtney Love?
I think so.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the thing? I'm
That
going to
fits.
hang out with rock stars and get famous?
And that's all she did. She said she did poems.
Right. So for me,
It's our
in the
third
day,
episode talking about...
loving punk rock, I considered her a bit player.
Yeah.
This book makes her a major player.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I agree with that.
It's because it's New York.
Right. It was a major player for legs.
She was a taste maker. She was somebody who was telling everybody, oh, you need to check this out. These guys are really cool.
I think within the scene, she was probably always at shows. She knew everyone. If you saw her perform and do her poetry, it sounded like it was crazy and really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think to most of us that started listening to punk in the 80s, we didn't really listen to a lot of Patti Smith.
Yeah.
I like it. I wouldn't say it's mind-blowing.
It's weird to me that you like Jim Carroll, but not Patti Smith. Because to me, I've always considered them the male and female of each other.
So for me, Patti is a charlatan who basically fucked her way into fame and copied every poet who was cool in the bohemian circle. Somebody finally said, let's, put your poetry to music at St. Mark's. And so she did that. She became really big. She was with Sam Shepard and what's his name? Her first, Robert Mapplethorpe, right? Who was gay, probably all along.
Yeah, that she was the fag hag for? Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then her music is just kind of bluesy, hippie stuff. I heard Horses and I was like, this is terrible.
It did feel like she, fucked her way in. But at the same time, what other role was there for a woman?
Right.
And they expected these women to, scrub the floors and make them dinner,
right.
But they didn't have
wicked
any
patriarchal
other work.
I don't blame her for fucking her way through the New York scene at all. I mean, I think
because you would have.
There's a time and place for everything, right?
Yeah.
But
I'd go gay for punk.
I think she's kind of a link to a kind of traditional bohemian past more so, and not really very innovative in any way whatsoever. I mean, the most respect for her I have is when she's talking in the book about Jim Carroll and he's off copying somewhere. And I love Jim Carroll because he's the real deal. He's gnarly as fuck. Mm-hmm. And so he's off, copying somewhere. He's supposed to be giving a reading at St. Mark's Poetry. And he doesn't show up. And one of the poets, Anne Waldman, is like, Jim's so undependable. And Patty's like, these people love Jim, but they don't, they love his talent. But, when Jim is not a responsible citizen, suddenly they hate Jim.
Yeah, they love punk rock, but they don't like it when it inconveniences
exactly.
them.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts about Patti Smith.
Yeah, and I mean, Richard Hell had a similar opinion of that. Well, showing up on time and playing your gig from beginning to end isn't punk rock.
Right.
You got to show up late, fucking pissed, and maybe make it halfway through your set. That's punk rock. Maybe that was right for you, but if I'm paying, I do want the not quite so punk rock show up on time and play your whole goddamn set.
I love Hell. He's one of the best parts of this book. I heard the story about Woody Guthrie once where he was brought to New York City as this kind of oaky hero, like poet, singer-songwriter, but the guy was totally fucked up all the time. So these high, arts people high society, Park Avenue would invite him over and they'd be like, we have Woody at our house. And Woody would be so fucked up that he would fall down and break a really expensive table. Mm-hmm. And they'd be all pissed off. Oh, shit. He broke this expensive table. Why do you have Woody Guthrie?
He probably doesn't even have a table in his house.
Right.
Because he broke it already.
Yeah. What about Sid shooting up out of the toilet bowl? Is that past part 3?
Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet.
Fucking
I did read about the sharing needles, using squirting paint with the needles, and then using the same needles that just had paint in them.
They were squirting blood on the ceiling of the fun house too, right?
Yeah, because they had to get the last little bit of blood out, and so there'd just be blood
nasty.
Dripping from the ceiling.
Coming up on Furk'd and the Burt.
And I was just like, fuck you. I was totally pissed off. Like, fuck Patti Smith.
Yeah, one of those great jokes about dead babies.
I think he was jacking off.
I was too busy shitting on plates.
They don't sit on faces, jack off, but Rob Lowe.
Called chipping?
Chipping.
What is chipping?
Yeah, I think he's not a doctor, but he'll be happy to take a look.
Deb, when girls fight, do they pull pubic hair? You ever fought with a bird?
Every battle I've fought with a baby, I have won. Thank you very much. All I know about is duck dicks. Yes, I've told you about the explosive penis.
Oh, penis.
What rhymes with exploding duck dicks?
Can I include the female?
Get the dope, make the gig.
And I think that Jim Morrison shat on a plate on Lou Reed's face.
I was just thinking about this, saggy, urethra that never goes down to normal size again. And when you Google sounding, you don't get that definition. He showed me pictures. Of a naughty place. Born too loose. How do you fix that? I think they rub a piece of bread on their balls or something too.
So that's why you became a musician.
Because of Iggy's dick. That's why he became. Banana slugs, that's the largest penis to body ratio in the animal kingdom. Where do you want poop?
In the toilet. It's not my dick.
Prove it.
It starts with Velvet Underground, MC5, and the Stooges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow the New York Dolls are in there.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea Malcolm McLaren managed those guys. I guess in the back of my mind I knew that, but I didn't realize that that's who he cut his teeth on.
Yeah, I knew nothing about the New York Dolls.
I love the fact that MC5 was the big brother band to the Stooges. They literally said that in there. We've got our baby brother band.
Yeah.
Right? And again, perception-wise, I have always thought of the Stooges as a much bigger thing from a punk perspective. Maybe not a rock and roll perspective, but from a punk perspective.
They made better records than the MC5. I mean, MC5's kind of a one-trick pony, right? I mean, Stooges, they do saxophone, art rock, punk rock. They're all over the place.
And that whole White Panthers thing, I had never heard that, and that did not resonate with me at all.
That did not age well. I can understand where they were coming from. They were hanging out with Black Panthers.
They weren't appropriating culture.
Totally see, somebody from Black Panthers. Excuse me, sir, but fuck you. You don't get to call yourself that.
Well, the LA branch rejected them, right? It was they said they hung with the local Michigan branch, but the LA people were not down. The Black Panthers were not down with the White Panthers. Honky ass shit.
This is that part you were talking about with Jim Carroll. Or I jerk them off or something. I would never let guys fuck me, and I wouldn't fuck guys unless they had poppers. If they had poppers, I would fuck them. Fuck them good. Ha ha ha. I'd like it if they were fat with a lot of money. Ha ha ha. And then later he says, I would actually say, listen, you don't have to pay me $50 because I'm only going to let you suck my dick. So just give me $40.
Unless they had poppers.
Just great.
What are poppers? I didn't look that up.
That's a speed, I think.
Is it? Okay.
No, it's a vial that you sniff, and it makes your heart rate go slow.
Amyl nitrate?
Amyl nitrate, yeah.
Was that poppers?
Yeah.
And we're going to look like suburban
Do they
idiots
have
if we don't know our drug
jalapenos in
culture.
this?
But then, like, dope, poppers might have changed definition a couple of times since then, so who knows? I know that's what poppers are now.
I think it's confetti that you just pull that little string
pull the
and
string.
then they pop.
You put it right in your face and you go, oh!
And the strings blow everywhere for the party. That's a popper.
Yeah.
Jim Carroll band's not the greatest in my opinion, but he lived on the streets basically from the time he was in high school.
And he's a millionaire now thanks to his diaries.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's right. The movie with Leonardo. And that book's good.
That's his?
Mm-hmm.
Basketball Diaries?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Basketball Diaries is...
I've seen that, yeah.
Leonardo is
Where he
Jim
jerks
Carroll.
off on the roof?
Uh-huh.
I think I watched that with my parents, and it was really weird when I was a teenager.
Mom, I never jerk off on the roof. I swear.
Let's go to the basement.
This is about basketball.
I jerk off anywhere but the roof now.
It's about basketball and jerking off.
Right.
The Jerk Off Diaries.
My mom walked into the room when I was watching one of the American Pie movies, the scene where the guy glues his hand to his dick.
I've done that one.
Did you do it on purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
like
he didn't do it on purpose.
That way he's perpetually jacking off.
But my mom walked in as this guy's like, you can't see what's going on, but you can tell he's very upset, and then he's upset about his dick. And my mom just comes in, doesn't wait for the punchline, just turns around and walks away. I was like,
Mom, you missed it.
You missed the funny part. Now you just think I'm a weirdo.
Again.
So Jim Carroll continues, and he talks about him getting offers where they say, live with me for a couple of weeks, I'll pay you. But I was like, no, I'll just shut my eyes. Unless they had poppers, then I could get into it.
Get into living with people?
I guess.
Was he one of the ones that was gay for pay only?
He was every which way.
He was every which way.
Didn't matter.
I did appreciate, while they used, they said fag a lot, they would occasionally say derogatory things or maybe not understand fully the much earlier acceptance of gay people than I would have expected, and transvestites. And we even had one Wayne County / Jane County, a transsexual or transgender. So I was really surprised by that. Not only were they banging each other and cool with it, but that they were, okay with people banging whoever that they wanted and nobody was giving shit for it.
Right.
I think they were in a place to be judging people.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
But I did like the part, speaking of what you were saying, where maybe it's Bowie's wife talks about how even Bowie wasn't confident enough to be flamboyant and be gay until he saw Iggy and Lou do it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because Lou Reed and Iggy both come across as almost misogynist.
Yeah, but they're in thongs.
They were the first people I knew from that time period that were openly gay.
Mm-hmm.
John Cale was talking about, yeah, we went to L.A. and Lou Reed is just so faggy. Like, it's like I've never thought of Lou Reed as faggy. And like I guess if you're hanging out with him all the time and he's banging men, maybe you would consider him faggy.
I'm not to say what faggy is, I guess, but there are solo albums of his where he is dressed differently than I guess he normally dresses.
He's got the leather on in Rock and Roll Animal.
Yeah.
The dog collar and the leather vest.
Which I think was very rare.
Faggy?
It's, well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, once again, what is faggy? I don't know.
That's a character. Isn't that Glenn from the Village People?
Right.
I mean, pretty much, right? The opposite of that in the book is Johnny Thunders.
Right.
I'm not wearing a dress.
But he wore a jumpsuit.
Straight hetero Italian male, Johnny Thunders. I mean, that's
when I saw a picture of him, I thought the John Turturro character in Big Lebowski where he played Jesus. And he was in the jumpsuit. I was like, oh, they got that from Johnny Thunders.
8-year-olds, dude.
I loved the New York Dolls dressing in drag when Iggy gets punched out by a scorpion. And he says that he's wearing a thong and a tutu.
A real scorpion?
Oh, yes, a real scorpion with fists.
The biker gang.
Yeah, the biker gang. I'd heard this interview with David Bowie a long time ago, and I didn't really know the context for it. But he was talking about how he kind of felt like he was a closeted heterosexual because he wanted to do the outfits and the makeup and the glam and the glitter, but he was questioningly straight for the most part, and he felt almost he needed to be gayer in order to be more fabulous.
David Bowie needed to be gayer?
Yeah. Am I gay? No, I'm bisexual because I love my wife. But am I straight? No, I'm bisexual. No, I think I just like women, but I do really like wearing these outfits.
I do look good.
Yeah. Or, oh man, the scene where they talk about David Bowie showing up with a different girl on each arm and that they all have matching bright orange haircuts. Him and the two girls.
We went to the same salon today. Why doesn't Molly Bang go to a salon day together to all get similar haircuts?
Spa and salon day.
Spa and salon day.
Well, I've been
I'm
talking
always
about
down
cutting
for
all my hair off, so we
my
can all
nails
get
did.
buzzed together.
That'd be a good photo shoot. We just all sit in a row of chairs next to each other and get our toenails done and get our pictures
awesome.
taken.
Yeah.
And Dev's
Not just a good
pissed off.
photo shoot. That'd be a good day, Scott.
No, I love pedicures, man.
Have you got a pedi before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
all
me
the time.
too. Yeah, yep.
I go with Maxine. Usually once a year we go, and mainly for the massage and
hand job.
The hand job, yeah. They take Scott into a private room because, you don't need to do that in front of children.
They don't give me a hand job. They just put their finger in my butthole.
Right.
Like raw, real fast. And it kind of hurts, but then later I jerk off to it.
Yeah, the thought of it.
The pain I really like. And the blood.
Well, they always have long nails.
Long nails, right.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
That's why I go there.
Do you ask for the girl with the longest
The
nails?
what was
Usually.
it? The fun, what'd you call it?
Fun job?
Fun bridge.
The fun bridge.
The fecal fun bridge?
You poked my
What was
fun
it?
bridge.
The flesh bridge, the grundle.
Grundle? Is that a gooch?
Do you guys
Yes.
remember that David Johansen was in Scrooged?
Yes. Do you remember he was
No.
Buster Poindexter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Oh man,
He's the ghost of...
Yeah, he's a taxi driver. The ghost of Christmas.
With a deep voice like this.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He kept his career going after the doll stuff.
He's a great actor.
Man,
I like
that's
him.
a great movie though, too.
Great actor?
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
No?
I don't know. I think
Perfectly
of like
serviceable.
maybe Al Pacino is a great actor.
I would prefer him in The Godfather, personally.
David Johansen. as
Don't
Don
ever mess with my
Corleone.
family.
You're gonna be sleeping with the fishes.
Well, for what he does.
Right, yeah.
If he's in a movie and he has 3 or 4 lines, that's great. I like to see that.
I remember thinking at one point, I'm really impressed that this guy still has something. He's keeping on with a career. He's staying in the public, eye, that small public eye. But I was pretty impressed that he was still going.
Dude, Buster Poindexter is solid.
Yeah.
I mean, he did that before Setzer had the big band.
Yeah.
I mean, he popularized big band music.
They got lucky, too. I mean, I was thinking about a lot of the bands in this, and how did they get famous? How is this New York scene so huge? What made this scene huge at the time? And it was, I think, pure luck and desperation.
Yeah.
Going to Hilly at CBGB's and telling him we play bluegrass. and then he made money,
Not only did they lie their way in there, but they lied their way in there first of all. And then they show up, obviously, as punks, and they are allowed to play. And then they're able to keep coming back, and then it now becomes a scene that just blows my mind.
So television went to Hilly and said, we play all this stuff. Blues, country, bluegrass. It was such a bad business. They were making so little money that the 10 people who came to see television that night was probably more customers than he was getting on any given night in his location.
And they played 3 nights in a row.
Right.
They played that whole weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And like Richard Hill was saying, that was the beginning of the scene. We got everybody to come out.
Yeah.
All 4 of our friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the Dolls got that residency at Maxwell's, I think.
Max's, Kansas City.
Max's, yeah. And it's just like no one is using this space, and it became this huge scene that everyone was going to.
And they played a psychiatrist convention.
Yeah. And I love that they...
so great.
I do not remember that.
Well, and that they love the psychiatrists, too.
That's so amazing.
Psychiatrists are smart people, and they get it. So they were a good audience.
Yeah, Sterling Morrison says, somebody said, we're going to play a psychiatrist convention. And I said, is that really the best we can do? And then later on it said something about the psych convention started out as a con. But yeah, they played...
Well, the Cramps did that. The Cramps aren't even mentioned in here, which is a surprise to me.
That's later, right?
Is it? I mean, 78 was Gravest Hits.
They're not from New York.
74 to 76, basically, is this first part.
And a little before.
Right, and I guess if you go back to Velvet Underground, they start around 65. Kind of overlaps with the Marianne Faithfull thing that we just watched, right?
Yeah.
Just watched. Yeah. Just that we just watched on these pages of books.
Somebody else flipping
Have
the
you
pages.
been just watching movies
I just
instead
watched
of...
these books go by.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like by 78 in New York in the punk scene, there was a lot more bands, whereas, in the early 70s and mid 70s, how many people were in that scene? Mm-hmm. We could have lived there and probably be in this book if we...
Yeah.
When I was reading it, it talks about, there was only a few people there or whatever, and thought how cool it would be and how easy and accessible it would be to see all these people. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I began to realize they only hung out with people that did really hard drugs and were fucked up.
Yeah.
At first I was thinking, maybe I could be friends with those people if I was living then, but there would be no way unless I immerse myself in that culture.
Who was straight in the book? I mean, was anyone hanging out with them?
I feel like there was a manager or two that wasn't...
I'm trying to think of who was... Malcolm McLaren was straight in the book, right?
Yeah.
He didn't partake.
Well, Danny Fields
Johnny
was
Rotten,
pretty...
They only mention him as having a female once.
Oh, you mean straight?
No. Straight on drugs or not? Like you were talking about.
Do you mean straight like they don't have scoliosis?
You're right. Cramps are Sacramento, but I guess I always thought they were New York because that live from the Peppermint Lounge.
Yeah. Who's straight in the book? Ron Ashton is straight. He's not fucked up. He seems like he wants to keep his wits about him, but everyone else is completely fucked up in the book. Or at least the guys from Punk who started the magazine, they're pretty fucked up, right?
Yeah, I mean, Richard Hell was one of the major people as part of that, right? They were fucked up as a football bat, as they say in Georgia.
You have to be fucked up to hang with them, in other words, right? Yeah.
I'm not cool enough. Who do we know that's dead? Richard Hell?
No, alive.
He's alive? What's he been doing for 30 years? Writing books?
He wrote a memoir about 4 or 5 years ago that's awesome. I dreamed I was a very clean tramp.
That's a good title.
It's great, yeah. The book's really good. He's been writing poetry, essays.
Any music?
Maybe a reunion or something, but not consistently. In the book, how he talks about music is this thing for when you're young. Being rock and roll is a young man's game. Or I forget what the actual quote was, right? But he's like, after a certain age, and he just kept going as a better version of Patti Smith.
Do you like Richard Hell and the Voidoids?
Love them.
They're good.
They're really good. I didn't realize how talentless he was in terms of being a musician till I read this book the first time.
Admittedly talentless.
Right, yeah. He had no interest in being good as a musician, which was the ethos. Even the Ramones got good after a while, but he was like, I'm not interested in this. This is performance art to me. This isn't music. And I love that about him. I think that's really great about Richard Hell. He was an artist on many levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That story about Tom Verlaine and Richard Hell trying people out. Dee Dee shows up. And who was the other guy that showed up?
It's hilarious.
Two people that became very famous in the punk rock scene.
The bass player for Blondie joined television. And
Yes.
Debbie Harry says, he fucked up. Ha ha. You know, she cracks up because he would have made a lot of money if he stayed in Blondie.
And they talk about how shitty Dee Dee was. He never played guitar before,
Oh, and
but
they were
he
trying
showed
to teach
up.
him how to do something that wasn't a bar chord.
Right.
And he was like this?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Talking about being talentless and not having instruments. I just love that story about how Johnny Ramone had saved up and bought this Mosrite, a Ventures guitar, which I love Mosrite.
Is that how you say it? I never knew that.
Yeah. Or Mosrite. I don't know. Then Lou Reed's like, dude, you got to get rid of that shitty guitar.
I was about to bring that story up.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's a Johnny Ramone signature version of that guitar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lou.
I forget who it was or where that was in the book, but it's one of the Ramones who kept saying he was being a real jerk. Kept telling Johnny, you know, you're playing the wrong guitar. It's hilarious. I wonder what guitar Lou Reed thought that he should be playing.
Yeah. Lou Reed, who played a Lucite Dan Armstrong, which is one of the weirdest guitars that weighs 10,000 pounds. Do you always taste Sarah's wine? Is that to be sure it's not poison?
It's sweet.
Little Gino's Pizza Rolls. Ooh, a tremendous taste of zesty pizza and a hot little bite-sized snack. A taste so big, it makes ordinary chips seem like small potatoes. Gino's Pizza Rolls, the pizza way to snack.
Spotify put together this daily mix, and there was a New York Dolls song called Don't Get Me Talkin', Don't Start Me Talkin', something similar to that. This is straightforward, balls to the wall rock and roll. No wonder this works. 3 chords, 3 minutes.
To me, they
Chuck
reminded
Berry.
me more of the Rolling Stones than any punk stuff I've heard.
It's like fast Chuck Berry is what
All that
they
goes
are.
back to everyone's infatuation with Keith Richards in that scene for whatever reason.
It is interesting that he's the exception to all these other famous rockers.
Yeah.
He's punk.
Keith Richards?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is.
Patty tries to look like him, definitely.
Yeah, she was asking.
Do I look like Keith
I
Richards?
look like Keith
Yeah,
Richards?
exactly. She cut her hair.
And the other thing that was in that book was Patti Smith got big because she's got big tits. Just like our last book we read, where everybody liked Marianne Faithfull because she has big tits. It's like, oh, Patti Smith was great. She had big tits.
Right.
I think
But
she
they
still
weren't
would have
even
been
that
popular.
I was going to say, so the definition of big tits clearly is different than mine.
Yeah, I mean, the picture of her in the book, it is so obvious that she is very thin. She's not big-breasted. I have no idea what these people are talking about.
Perhaps
She doesn't
the
look
parenthetical
big-breasted.
statement is she has big tits for a heroin addict.
There we go.
Was
There we
she?
go.
Was she smacked out?
I don't know.
I mean, she must have on something. That scene where she's asking about if her hair looked like Keith Richards, I think that was told by another girl who was way sick, and Patty was spending the whole time, instead of helping her, being like, now does my hair look like Keith?
I was scared to bring it up, but I thought the same thing. That I was like, those aren't big. They're beautiful, I'm sure, but they're not.
Maybe they were big for New York.
Motorboat them, but they're
But
not
she'd have
big.
to squeeze them together.
Is that what you were scared to bring up, Scott?
I have a small wiener. But I literally, and I forgot to do it, but I literally was gonna search Patti Smith big tits just to see
We
if
could do it now.
maybe it was a punk rock thing to get them reduced or something. Maybe she did have.
And who was it that she convinced to do a Playboy shoot?
Is this it biggest hit? No, it's not. It's close.
Baby Buell.
Yeah, and it ruined her career, but
Yeah.
she's okay with it
Yeah.
because she was tired of being a model.
Right. Tired of dating rock stars like Todd Rundgren.
I mean, she's got a little
in
bit
that
of
one.
cleavage.
Isn't she naked in the top one? The third one? That one?
All right, so Googling Patti Smith big tits on Pinterest.
Of course,
Oh.
it's on Pinterest. Yeah, I mean, they're all right.
They're
big-ish.
They're bigger than average.
They're bigger than average.
I take it back.
You think that one picture's real at the top?
Oh no, you have to sign up for Pinterest in order to see your boobs.
I have to log into bignaturals.cum to see this.
Clear the
Is
browsing
it really called
history.
bignaturals.com?
I don't know.
Wait, I want to see.
wouldn't
I
know,
want to see
Scott.
that
You-
one. That's the one I want to see.
That's the one that pulled up.
same one though.
Yeah, it's what Pinterest does. It sucks you in with something nice and then gives you only one boob.
Those are big. In that picture, those are big to her body. Yeah.
To me, I think they have to wear a size 7 3/4 hat before they're big.
I have a Patti Smith story. So I was working at the Bite here in Oregon in the 90s.
What is that? Is that a restaurant or a...
Every July down at the waterfront, they would have music and all of the top food places.
Oh, it's like the Taste of Oregon now.
Yeah, it used to be called the Bite.
Gotcha.
You know, and the top food places were not really, I mean, compared to now, but I thought they were pretty good. So I was working at this place, grilling chicken, which I wasn't very good at. I just got out of grad school.
So much salmonella.
Patti Smith was, actually I found out what a sneaky was. I dropped some and this
What
guy
is
was
a
like,
sneaky?
he was like, you pull sneaky. Pull sneaky? Pull sneaky means put it back on the grill.
I thought that meant you had to give Sneaky a hand job.
It's like
because
the 2
you
or
dropped the chicken.
It's like the 2 or 3 second rule, whatever that is.
You drop that chicken, you pull Sneaky.
Yeah.
Oh, Sneaky.
So I was working there, and Patti Smith was playing.
No other way.
Pull it, yeah. Put it back on.
So is that a thing people say? Pull Sneaky, or
He was Asian, I take it, since he was missing pronouns. Please cut that later so we don't sound like some racist asshole. No Asians use pronouns.
I'm gonna just put it at the beginning, completely out of context.
You pull Sneaky? What was he, Asian?
It's common if chicken falls on the ground that people just cook it because all the shitty stuff about a chicken is going to be cooked off.
away, right? Yeah.
I thought you were going to say there's
I had no
nothing
idea.
worse on the floor than what's in a chicken.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. I had no idea. I dropped a lot of chicken that summer, so he was.
Right. So we haven't even gotten close to the Patti
He
Smith
hired
part
me
of the
back.
story.
I worked there for 2 years. Both Amy and I worked there for 2 years. Once at the Rose Festival with Los Lobos played, and so Patti Smith.
Did she pull your Sneaky?
No, but she kind of pissed me off.
Of course she did.
So Patti Smith's playing at the Bite, and I'm down there. I see her walking around. She looks like a bag lady, and no one recognizes her. It's 95 or 6, and I said to Amy, there's Patti Smith. No one's around her, talking to her. So she's at this taco stand, and she comes away from the taco stand, and I said, got Amy all lined up, with the camera. Can I get a picture with you? And she's no, and walked away. And I was just like, fuck you. I was totally pissed off. Like, fuck Patti
I'm
Smith.
so glad I served you
didn't
that
like
chicken I dropped on the floor.
You know, it's a good place to eat. That place with the chicken.
From what I've read in this book, it sounded like exactly the response that you would get from that woman.
Yeah.
Fuck you, David Lee Roth.
There's more.
I'm going to put you in a headlock. You should have put her in a headlock.
So I was totally pissed off. And then later on from the stage, and I had friends there, they can verify this. I don't know, it sounds pretty bullshitty. But she said, I want to apologize to that guy who caught me getting my fish taco. I didn't want a picture because I was afraid I had a fish bone in my tooth.
Right.
Well, that's cool, though.
I know, yeah.
Did you feel better about Patti Smith or not?
I felt like, Patti Smith just acknowledged that I harassed her from the stage.
Right, that's great.
And in return, I will pull any Sneaky. There's so many good little quotes and things in this one. It says, Nico simply stood there. You could see she was waiting to reply in her own time. Ages later, out of the blue, came her first words. I cannot make love to Jews anymore. You can totally picture her saying that. It's such a funny thing to say.
Because she's German?
Yes.
Jews?
Well,
have you ever dated a Jew? You can't date them.
All right, so we're on to Asian. What other fucking racist bullshit can we say?
So that's Lou Reed, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
No Asians use pronouns, and we fucking will never date a Jew. Do you think that?
Sadly, when you were talking about that, I was like, are you talking about a Native American? You're talking about pull Sneaky?
Uh-huh. Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Oh, so because Native Americans don't use pronouns?
Pull Sneaky.
Not the ones I saw on the TV before I actually met
Oh, you
one.
mean like on the Lone Ranger or something?
You pull Sneaky.
Tonto?
You pull Sneaky.
Super authentic.
So do you think she gave that up for what reason?
No, it was her way of breaking up with him.
It's because she'd had that giant Christian cock from Iggy Pop.
No, Nico was another one that I felt, I mean, she had some talent, but I was looking up the songs that I know of hers, and every single one was written by somebody else. She didn't write her own music. It felt like she was a pretty girl who was at the right place at the right time, who fucked the right dicks, and she got a record deal out of it.
I fucked all the wrong dicks to get a record deal.
Yeah, you gotta be more careful.
clearly have chosen poorly.
But these days, really sweet, depressing song that I was like, oh man, that must have come from her heart. It was written by a 16-year-old boy.
Right. Yay! Justin Bieber?
No, he doesn't write his own music.
I like the fact in that whole thing is Lou Reed never let me sing the good songs. He kept all the good songs for himself. It's like it's so catty.
The songs she sings are great.
I think so too. It's so funny that she would say that because those albums are truly enhanced by her vocals.
It is nice to have the balance of his vocals and hers.
Right, to hear her perspective on it was very interesting.
Well, and she had a very unique voice, too. She wasn't going to be able to hit any high notes, but, you know, being an alto myself, and if you're trying out for a play, you're never the lead character, but you could easily be the wicked stepmother.
Right.
And that you're always second fiddle, and you're always backup. But it is important, and she did it, and she did it well. But the frustration with not being the lead is just, I mean, I think it's something that's going to happen when you're an alto.
Yeah. To your point earlier, women in the scene.
Yeah.
The fact that there even were women in the scene, I don't think there was a single woman at any punk show that I went to. So to think of the fact that they were on stage is pretty impressive.
Yeah, with how dangerous the shows were, you know, you wouldn't want your girlfriend going.
Right. If you could get one.
If you could get one.
I agree. I've been to a lot of punk shows, and I felt like it was unsafe for me, and I'm 6'3".
Yeah. I felt it's unsafe for you too, Scott.
I'm a big puss, but I mean, seriously, when you're standing there and you get nailed in the head and fall to the ground out of
And then
nowhere,
you pop up and you can't tell who did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck those punks.
Think about Iggy getting all that shit thrown at him.
Right.
Literal.
Every night.
That story about him getting egged is in every rock and roll anthology has something about Iggy just like
The Scorpions.
Yeah, this guy was egging me, and I just wasn't going to take it, and I knew I was going to get my ass kicked, so I just called him out on it, and he beat me to a pulp.
Choo, choo, choo.
So
He kept getting up, though.
yeah,
And the guy was like,
because he's
"What
a
the
badass, man.
I don't know if he's a badass.
Or
I
he
think
was
he's just
numb.
Maybe an idiot.
He is numb.
He's just numb. You're not going to hurt somebody on heroin.
There's
Never
those
fight
stories.
someone on
Remember,
heroin.
is it Oofty Goofty and the dollop that didn't have any feeling and he could just get the shit kicked out of him?
I listened to that one. That was the one that you sent me, which
Yeah,
I just
it's
thought
crazy.
was genius.
I think Iggy was like that. He had so many drugs and he just had one of those
indestructible
body chemistry.
He's
that,
exoskeletal. You can see it when you look at him. He's like a shrimp.
They would talk about him falling down the stairs and popping back up and being
Yeah,
fine
right.
with it. One of the times that he fell down the stairs, he fell down an entire flight of stairs and landed on his face. You know, when you have a car accident where you've got a van with 8 children in it and a pregnant mother, and then it gets hit by a tiny little beater with one dude in it that's drunk, and he walks away unscathed and everybody in the other car dies. It's, you know, they flop around and they bounce.
which, I mean, that's a great argument for drinking and driving. If
Yeah.
you want to live
You should be
on
drunk.
the road.
God loves idiots and drunks.
The Iggy story, though, is really funny. He's wearing a tutu and a G-string, and that whole fight thing happens, and then is at the same time he stays at some young girl's house that lives
Yeah.
with her parents and wakes up the next morning and he's wearing his tutu.
Yeah, at breakfast, yes.
Can you fucking imagine that?
Hopefully
No.
she wasn't 13. But she might have been.
It's quite possible. He did know her parents, and they were cool.
Very liberal.
Jesus.
No, and I think with the egg thing, too, that he found out later that it was an initiation, that the guy just had to come and throw eggs. So he could have let it go, and he wouldn't have gotten, you know, the shit kicked out of him.
But then we wouldn't have read about it
But then
in
we
20
wouldn't have
different
read
books.
about it.
Ron Ashton would just stick the symbol in front of him when the stooges played.
Yeah.
I love that scene in the book. Where
It sounded like a battle.
I just hide.
a
I would put the
shield.
symbol up and I just hide behind the symbol during the
And
show.
they get mad at Iggy for standing close to them.
Because they were all throwing at Iggy. Yeah.
Anyone here ever been assaulted on stage?
I've always wanted to be.
I got BBs thrown at me once.
Really? I've been booed a few times.
Considerable amount, like
That
handfuls
feels
of
like an
BBs.
assault. It hurts longer.
No, I loved it. When Molly Bang first started, we played. It was one of those scams where you have to sell tickets for $10, and the dude doing the show makes like $1,000, and the winner gets like $200 to record or whatever. And we didn't sell tickets, but somehow we got scammed to do it. We didn't pay anything, and we get there, and it's one of those things where the more people you bring, the more chance you have to win. So it was a lot of young teenagers and their parent. A lot of kids there, and it was mostly shitty hip hop and metal, and none of it sounded good. And our drummer at the time told some joke about dead babies or something that...
There's so many.
Yeah, one of those great jokes about dead babies. And we got booed for a good 30 seconds. People were yelling and upset, and it made me feel good, personally.
Interaction with the crowd.
Yeah.
How do you get 5 dead babies into a bowl? With a blender. How do you get them out? Chips.
What's easier to unload, a truck full of bowling balls or a truck full of dead babies? Truck full of dead babies because you can use a pitchfork.
What's the difference between a Lamborghini and a pile of dead babies? I don't have a Lamborghini in my garage.
I've never heard that. I don't know one of these to even save my life. Yeah.
My father would laugh at just about anything, but the one racist jokes he would never tolerate, which I appreciated.
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky. I remember coming home in 2nd or 3rd grade with some off-color, literally, joke, and Dad just shook his head, and shook my head. Yeah, that's probably what he did. And it's just like, that's not funny. And then he explained, like, growing up as a white sharecropper, he felt he was lower on the totem post than black property owners. He was very open-minded, I would say. He grew from a fundamentalist Christian as a child to a liberal-minded hippie as an adult.
Wow, that's rare.
It is.
But yeah, the one joke, which was on a T-shirt somewhere that I repeated, and he did not laugh as an adult. Most of the time, he would always give me the courtesy laugh. But the one that he didn't laugh at was, "Is it pedophilia if the kid is dead?" Whoa, that one got
not funny.
A frowny face from the old man.
Not funny, son.
I think Joe has one that's pretty gross.
What's the difference between Iggy Pop and a baby?
Now he's using Iggy Pop in place of something way filthier.
Gotcha.
Iggy Pop didn't die when I fucked it in the ass.
What was the other option?
Your grandmother.
And I said that was too far.
Not my grandmother.
Oh, what's sadder than a dead baby or 5 dead babies stapled to a tree? 1 dead baby stapled to 5 trees.
Yeesh. It is sadder.
And now we take a break to listen to a song from a great band from Melbourne, Australia. This is Wurst Nurse performing the song Hot Doctor from their 2018 EP Hot, Hot, Hot. Get ready for a hot beef injection. These folks rock. Check them out on Bandcamp.
doctor. I just want your attention.
We're
I like
good
this little
people.
random quote. Ed Sanders, I don't remember who he is. And then
Bernie Sanders?
He's in the Fugs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love the Fugs.
Yeah, Ed Sanders.
They are kind of pre-punk.
Is it Bernie Sanders?
Are they kin to Bernie Sanders?
Maybe in spirit, but a little weirder.
The Monks should kind of be part of that too. They're in the same category.
Yeah.
So he says, the only rules were that I had to be able to film everything because I was making this documentary called Amphetamine Head. Yeah. I spread the word and all these A-heads came and they were squirting colored ink onto canvas from their syringes. Then they'd use the same syringe to shoot up with. That would have been a good flick, but the police confiscated the footage. Can you imagine?
Oh, man. It's got to be out there somewhere. And I doubt they would have destroyed it.
Where is art like that anymore? Who's doing shit like that now, you know?
Who's dying for their art? And then right after, Susan Pyle says this, people did strange things when they did Speed. There was a guy who showed up at Max's Kansas City with his arm in a sling. Everyone was like, what happened to you? He said, oh, I took a shot of Speed and I couldn't stop brushing my hair for 3 days.
Oh, my God. I loved that one. Oh.
I'm so sore.
I don't think he was brushing his hair.
You think it was masturbating?
I think he was jacking off because I've heard the stories of people on meth. They're going to get off, damn it. And so they're going to masturbate.
It just takes forever.
But it takes for fucking ever. So literally hours and hours and hours of masturbating. And then they finally get off and they're like, oh, thank God,
Isn't that
it's
called
over.
Goonies?
No comment.
You've goonied?
I don't know what it's called.
What's Goonies?
Gooning.
Gooning?
Gooning. That's where you just constantly rub one until the precipice and then you hold back. And then you keep going for it.
To practice holding it?
Last longer? Or it's supposed to make your orgasm better in the end? Or
No, I don't know if it's supposed to do anything other than just to hold it in.
Just for fun?
So then, I always thought that we're the 30th anniversary of the Goonies. It's like, wow, these guys are still going at it. Good for them.
I like the dead baby jokes more.
Yeah. I'll try to think of some more.
I'm just kidding. I like that one. That was a good one.
The whole Warhol scene was on Speed. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Was the fun with Dick and Jane in part 3? Was that in the parts that we're supposed to be discussing?
I think that's coming up.
Okay. That to me was amazing because I had to look up Black Beauties, which were Adderalls in the 70s.
So my mom had those growing
Black
up.
Beauties?
Yeah, well, our family
Which
had
means
those.
you had them.
Yes, exactly. So
Wasn't your dad in the military, though?
Yeah, he was in Korean reserves. Yeah. And he once took one of my mom's quote unquote diet pills when he was coaching soccer and had a freak out so bad that he was just like, I'll never take one of your mother's diet pills again. He was like freaking out on
Was
the
he
field.
beating the kids? And
No, he was a pretty yelling coach type, Bobby Knight-ish to begin with, you know?
God.
And so, yeah, he was that guy. And so
John, get your ass out there.
it was the 70s. So I wasn't on the team.
Oh.
But he took one of my mom's pep pills to get up for the game, and he never took one again. So, right. But my mom was constantly telling us as kids and young adolescents, stop taking my diet pills, kids. Who's been taking my diet pills? And I'd be like, nobody. She had Black Beauties, yeah.
people didn't realize how serious these drugs were.
Right.
That everybody was taking.
Yeah.
Right. And then after they did realize them, then they just prescribed them to kids.
Yeah.
Because it's Adderall, right?
Yep.
We shouldn't give those adults. Let's give them all
We'll
to kids.
just give it to people whose brains are still developing.
Right, that's better.
I was prescribed multiple drugs as a teenager. And looking back at it and my behavior and the things that led them to diagnose and medicate me totally seems like just adolescent angst, drama, bullshit. If somebody had sat down and talked to me, I wouldn't have needed to be on
come
drugs.
on. No parent wants to do that.
No, they didn't. It's
true.
So they put me on drugs. And they put me on drugs when I was in first grade.
Ugh, that's rough.
And it was because I was...
First grade?
First grade. They
It's
put me
pretty
on
normal.
Adderall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I could sit down and pay attention, but I wasn't learning anything, and I wasn't...
That blows my mind.
I lost 50% of my body weight in first grade.
They tried to tell me I was bipolar when I was a teenager. When my mom took me to the doctor to be put on mood stabilizers, I had just broken up with my boyfriend of a year.
Aren't all teenagers bipolar? I mean, isn't that...
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of it, right?
Yeah. Our bodies are so fucked, and our hormones are so fucked, and our friends are so fucked, and our school is so fucked, and our parents are so fucked.
Your whole support system is a bunch of other people that are fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, I remember taking my freshman of high school psychology class, and they have us sit down and take this basic stress test and ask questions. Do you expect to either in the next year or have you in the past year had to move, switched or started a new school, switched or started a new job? Have your parents gotten divorced? Have your parents gotten married? Is there a new child in the family? They made a point. So you think you're freaking out, but you're just really overloaded right now. Hold on a second. Am I not crazy?
But it's good that we judge all these people on heroin.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you were around at this time, at that age, you would have gotten out of high school, quit because of that bullshit, and maybe found some similar people.
Right. Self-medicated with some heroin
in this scene.
Maybe bang some 14-year-olds.
Well, and speed is basically like Adderall, what I was taking when I was in second grade.
Yeah, Ritalin and Adderall are both.
Yep, they are.
I mean, Black Beauty, I had to look that up when Jane County was talking about, I was on 5 Black Beauties when I hit Dick Manitoba.
Yeah.
All right, what drug is that?
Mm-hmm.
It said, this was a prescription Adderall.
Because she emphasizes, remember the Black Beauties back then? 5 Black Beauties.
I had 5 of those. It'll make you crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So many of those pills I had to look up.
Yeah.
I mean, I already knew about Tinuals.
Yeah.
Tinuals
Tuinol.
because of
Tuinol, yeah.
Tuinol because Marion Faithfull. Or somebody would say something like blues and reds or something like that. What are you talking about?
Right.
Blues down, reds up.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
Blues are downers and the reds are uppers.
Oh.
Quaaludes versus speed.
I'm not hip to any of this.
Yeah. I've heard.
I got a lot of catching up to do. Can you hook me up?
I got some friends with some.
Can you show me in a safe environment?
You got the internet.
You were too busy at home siphoning for your Robert Mapplethorpe portraits.
That's right.
I was too busy shitting on plates.
The news was trying to scare parents a couple of years ago with one of those, is your kid doing drugs? Stay tuned to find out kind of bullshit stories. And they were talking about this thing called party mix. And it's where you have a bunch of teenagers and they all raid their parents' medicine cabinets. And then they go to whoever's house, his parents are out of town for the week. And they dump all the pills into a bowl. Yeah. And then you just pick at random.
Yep, I'd heard those as farm parties, PH.
I heard about that as the weekend when I was in high school.
The weekend. That was at John's house, thanks to his mother's prescriptions.
But on the news, they were making it sound like, every single kid was doing it, that it wasn't just a couple of
John's house
wackos.
every night. He just has a bowl.
No, it was anybody's house whose parents were not there.
That was my house. My parents were so tired of being parents by the time I came around.
Get home at 3. Parents don't get home till 5.
They finally had money. They'd go out of town just weekends or weeks on end. And my house was second because the first house was a friend of mine whose parents divorced, and they left him and his 18-year-old sister because she was an adult. And they didn't want to take him out of high school, and he was a freshman, and she had just graduated high school. They were going to leave them in the house with no parents.
Oh. Instead of one of them staying?
No one stayed there. Their parents got a divorce. They both remarried, but they kept that house so the kids could continue high school. They didn't want to take them out of high school. That was the first stop. And then if my parents were out of town, that was the second stop.
Mm-hmm.
But we never mixed prescription pills into a bowl and fished around to see what would happen when you just took one. Like Super Troopers 2, which I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I haven't yet. I want to so bad.
It's better than the first one.
What? That never happens.
First one, okay, I get it. It was all right. The second one, maybe because I walked in with little expectation, I truly felt like that was just a genius comedy movie. And it includes a farm party. Because they confiscated a bunch of drugs. They're like, I don't even know what these are. And one guy just goes, okay. And the other guys, you're a genius. And they all just start popping them out of nowhere.
Do they sit on faces?
They don't sit
Do
on
they
faces,
on
back
plates?
off. But Rob Lowe
Or shit on plates.
does a punching bag routine with a prosthetic penis, which is one of the
All right.
funniest scenes I've ever seen.
I'm back in.
Yeah, I'm back in for sure.
Yeah.
So regarding the drugs in the book, I've heard about pretty much all of them, but there was one reference that I looked up reading at this time that I didn't catch. It was called chipping.
Chipping.
Chipping. What is chipping? I've never heard of this, and I looked it up. It's casual weekend heroin use.
So you're not an addict.
Right.
You just do it once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I forgot, I think it was Dee Dee or maybe Sid in the next section. Sid started chipping with Nancy. I think that's in the next section we're going to read.
Yeah.
And they were talking about you had to do it for 2 weeks straight to become a heroin addict.
Yeah.
Right, because you could let it go.
Okay, so we know that it is dangerous, but as long as we don't do it too much, we're fine.
Yeah, drugs should be like an amusement park. You save up, you do it for one day, maybe a year with your church group, and then you don't do it again.
Wayne Kramer in the book moves to New York with no habit. And he's like, heroin was coming out of the faucets. He's like, I moved to New York City to get away from Detroit because he was a failed mover and shaker as a criminal. He sold drugs to a DEA agent, and then he moved to New York after he got out of jail and started gang war with Johnny Thunders. And that's the next section, huh?
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
I saw him in Detroit 2003 or 4. They did a MC5 reunion. I want to say Mark Arm from Mudhoney was
that sounds
singing.
right. Yep, I remember that.
And Wayne Kramer is one of the best guitarists I've ever seen.
Yeah, I love Wayne Kramer.
It's one of the few times that I've just watched a guitar player's hands the entire time. And it's not always just super technical or crazy. I really like watching interviews with him, and I really like watching him play guitar.
Yeah.
Also, that concert, John Sinclair opens. I don't know if you guys remember him in the book, John Sinclair.
Of course. White Panther poet.
But I think and I didn't realize this when I first read it. So I first read this, and I lived in Ann Arbor, and I was going to Detroit all the time. And it mentions it all through this book, which was really exciting to me. I would be reading it, and they'd mention a place that was right down the street, or I'd just driven by. So it was really kind of magical. And then I was like, well, I got to see all these bands now. And then MC5 played, which was really cool, and John Sinclair. But it mentions in here how he went to jail for many years for
giving a girl a joint.
Yeah, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And at that same time, someone let me borrow a John Lennon solo anthology, and he has a song about John Sinclair.
I think the Detroit parts of this book are really interesting. And really entertaining. One, this when the Stooges drive the truck into the bridge that's too low.
Yeah.
The rental truck, and they call Danny Fields in the middle of the night, and they're like, fix this. And he's like, I'm done with you assholes. You fix it.
And they said that you could still see where
the bridge.
They damaged it.
Yeah.
God protects idiots and drunks, and in this case, we had both.
Dead again.
Praise the Lord.
They were speeding, and they came to an abrupt stop.
And then the next day,
Yeah, they're out searching in the grass.
the
for
guy's
their
like,
drugs.
bring me back to the bridge because I threw my pills into the bushes.
I think he even says they were Reds.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Really fucked up. Yeah.
They're really fucked up.
Velvet Underground, heroin, no surprise. They sing about it. Iggy Pop, heroin, no surprise. But for
Makes him feel like a man.
Yeah.
When he puts a spike into his veins.
Yeah, it does. And he's waiting for his man.
Beginning to see the
in
light.
Harlem.
And Dee Dee, you kind of always knew he was junky. But for me, I always thought that whole heroin thing for punks, I always thought that was a ruse. There's some picture of Johnny Rotten, really famous, where he's got a couple syringes on his jacket.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was like, we hate hippies. Fuck you. We're making fun of you.
Yeah.
I really had no clue that was part of the recipe of punk.
Do you think maybe
heroin.
he was a nurse or something and he just had some left over from...
Yeah, I think he's not a doctor, but he'll be happy to take a look.
Dee Dee and his drug problem made me particularly sad because of his relationship with Connie.
God, crazy.
Crazy Connie.
We're talking earlier about, oh my God, I just brain farted her name.
Baby Buell?
No.
Lisa, Jenny.
Was Nico the first? No, was
Marianne Faithfull?
Patty the first?
Oh, Courtney Love.
Courtney Love, yeah.
Yeah. So that just came out. I hope I don't get a lot of fucking hate mail about that. But I'll bring on the hate mail about Courtney Love. I don't care.
Who was gonna...
everybody hates
both
her.
people who
Is
listen to
any
this.
nice person gonna...
Patrick
Anyone
Luckett, who
we
listens
respect?
to this, is going to write, dude, I do not think it's okay for you to call Patty Smith.
If you like Courtney Love, we don't care.
Yeah, we really don't. But Connie really felt like a Courtney Love kind of person, pulling people's tits out in front of bars. And Dee Dee says, Connie may have brought me close to death at a lot of times, but in a way she kept me alive. No one else did. I had all that responsibility. I had to play every night, and no one gave a damn if I had a place to live or if I had any dope or if I had anything to eat. Connie did. She was all I had. He's looking back and still saying these things.
Right.
So that's how bad it was.
That's how dumb he was.
Yeah.
That's how high he was.
Yeah. Fuck Connie.
Ta-da!
Yeah, because they were all strippers.
And that's Courtney
Yeah,
Love.
they're all strippers.
Getting back at Kurt over and over and over again. He keeps on getting clean and she keeps on bringing him down. And eventually it kills him. And it felt like the same story all over again.
Well, it's kind of like Sid and Nancy, right? I mean, they had a really toxic relationship too. And didn't Joey and his...
Joey was smacking in the book, yeah. He was...
Joey's girlfriend ended up marrying Johnny. Linda.
Everybody was fucking everybody.
Yeah, why not? No surprise that you want to fuck them because I like fucking them and we have a lot in common.
That passage you just referred to, though, I mean, to me, it just kind of summarizes how small and basic they were.
Yeah.
I need to score drugs and show up for the gig.
And maybe eat some beans.
If I can do these two things, maybe get some food along the way, but just stay fucked up. When I straighten out, get fucked up again, go to a gig, be part of a band. I mean, that's really very basic survival.
This far into the book, anyway, there's very little dope sickness because everybody's just staying high.
No one's leaving New York.
Right?
Yeah.
Heroin runs out of the faucets.
It was the New York Dolls that broke up because they went to Florida and couldn't get any dope.
Right.
Love those stories.
Now that I'm sober, I hate you.
Yeah, exactly.
That would suck to go to Florida, though. I mean, of all places. What the... I wouldn't even want to go to Florida now.
Not only am I dope
Molly
sick,
Bang.
I'm really hot.
Yeah.
That's like the last place. Take me to New Mexico or something. I don't want to...
The one thing about the Connie and Dee Dee relationship that I laughed at, his new girlfriend, Vera.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
He's like, Vera's going to meet us in L.A. or wherever they went. And he sent somebody to the airport. He goes, go look for a woman that looks like Connie.
Connie, yeah, right.
It's just like, I'm so fucked up. I can't even date someone that doesn't look like Connie.
You probably thought she was
easier
Connie
that way.
sometimes.
It's like, I hope I don't call her Connie.
The Dee Dee stories are, they're a little bit disturbing, but I find him really lovable,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's just...
Everyone else did, apparently, too.
Yeah, right.
He's kind of charming.
Somebody said in there, I could never tell if he was an idiot or if he was just playing that so he could get what he wanted. But this guy, people took him under his wing. Until I read this book, I always thought of that guy as a jackass.
He appears that way in interviews.
Yeah, exactly. And Eat the Rat, stupid other songs like that.
But he was like the principal writer for the Ramones. He wrote most of their songs.
Yeah, early on.
Yeah.
What a sweet guy.
He is. He's huggable.
I'm looking at the part where he's with Eileen Polk, and she's already fought Connie once, and Connie knocked her out, so she's kind of ready for it. Next time, she's like, I'm going to fuck her up. And so they come out. Yes. They're in, I don't know, I think it's like CB's. And she comes in and says, I'm really happy you guys are together. And she leaves, and Eileen Polk says to Dee Dee, she's waiting for us outside. And Dee Dee says, no, she wouldn't do that. So they go out, and she throws Dee Dee to the ground, or she pushed him, and it says he hit his head against the grill of a big old car, a Cadillac. He was knocked out cold. Then she fights her, and the next day, she recalls the only thing Dee Dee ever said about it the next day was, it's really bad to get knocked out like that when you're drinking. You can lose the oxygen supply to your head. And she says to him, yeah, right, Dee Dee. Yeah. So out of that whole altercation, Dee Dee's like, I could have died.
Right, right.
She didn't just give Connie a simple smack around. She knocked her to the ground and then kicked and punched until she wasn't moving anymore because she knew if Connie got up, then there was going to be a real fight. So she had to make sure it was done. They don't give any account of how badly beat up Connie was, but if you're getting kicked on the ground, you're definitely going to come away with bruised ribs, probably going to need to go to the hospital. And all he's like, man, you should have done something about me being knocked out.
Right. Back to Dee Dee. Yeah, a lot of hair pulling. Connie was always yanking somebody's hair. And
I really love the scene, the first beat up, or no, the second beat up, where
ripped her clothes off.
Yeah, she ripped her clothes off, so her boobs were out and had her fingernails in her hair, and she didn't want to fight back too much because hair was everything to a girl, and if
as a stripper,
yes, yeah,
yeah, she's gonna let herself kind of get beat up if it meant not having her hair ripped out.
Pubic hair or just regular hair?
Regular hair. Well, I think their pants.
Do they
are
rip
still...
pubic hair when they fight?
They had pubic hair in the 70s.
They had a lot of pubic
from
hair.
the porn movies
Mhm.
I've seen.
Deb, when girls fight, do they pull pubic hair?
I've never physically fought with another girl. I choked one once, but I physically fought with a man.
Yeah,
but that was in childhood.
What about
so.
a baby?
I've never fought with a baby because I've always
animals.
Is it pugilism if the kid is dead?
You ever fought with a bird?
Every battle I've fought with a baby, I have won. Thank you very much. Never had my
You're
ass
like
kicked by a
human
baby.
dicks.
I do prefer the
What do you
human dick.
like more, human dicks, regular dicks, or fighting baby birds?
Baby bird dicks.
Glad we're on track.
Baby bird dicks.
Can somebody please explain to me how bird dicks work in the normal world?
Yeah.
Because all I know about is duck dicks, and those
Why
are
would
terrifying.
you know about a duck dick?
Because it's the most horrifying thing in the animal kingdom.
No.
Have you ever heard of an explosive penis?
Oh, we've had this conversation.
Yes, I've told you about the explosive penis.
Yeah.
And I know only about the
That's what
explosive
Dave was
penis
called
in
in
birds.
college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
explosive penis.
Explosive
Was it
penis.
also as long as the rest of your body?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it shrivel up after mating season and fall off?
Maybe.
Does it have barbs on it?
I don't know. I never looked.
Wouldn't you notice the barbs when you're jerking off, though?
The barbs. Oh, yeah, the barbs. Explosive penis with barbs.
Yeah.
That does sound like an awesome band name.
Mm-hmm.
The barbs.
Explosive
Do you
duck
notice the
dick.
barbs?
Explosive duck dick. Yes.
EDD.
Let's write a song. Deb,
And it's
your turn to
educational.
write a song. Write a song about duck dicks. You know all about it. If anyone,
The foul penis.
you know that if you hear a song about duck dicks,
It's gonna be
exploding
from
duck
Deb.
dicks,
It's going to be very upsetting.
you're gonna be jealous that you
Yeah.
didn't do it first.
I think we're workshopping a new song right
Yeah,
now.
can you make it rhyme with dead babies?
What rhymes with exploding duck dicks?
Can I include the female opposite anatomy of multiple dead-end vaginas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fun bridge, please.
Fleshy fun bridge.
Fleshy fun bridge.
That should be in the song.
That's going to be Joe's stage name when he eventually...
Right.
When you touch my fleshy fun bridge. So I have a good.
That's the chorus.
One of my favorite quotes, Richard Hell. So it says, all their songs, the Ramones, were 2 minutes long, and I asked them the names of all their songs. They had maybe 5 or 6 at the time. I don't want to go in the basement. I don't want to walk around with you. I don't want to be learned.
this.
I don't want to be tamed, and I don't want to something else. And Dee Dee said, we didn't write a positive song until now I want to sniff some glue.
One of my
That was
favorite
actually in the
Ramones
CBGB
songs.
movie.
That's so good.
So that CBGB
Oh, yeah.
movie
It's up.
must have been taken from this
Documentary
book.
or movie?
No, the movie with Severus Snape as Hilly Kristal. It must have been taken from this book because they lifted the swastika stickers
a lot of
from the
lines
Dead
from the
Boys.
book, yep.
That scene was ripped out of this book. And that whole scene where Hilly is talking to the Ramones and they say, he's like, what songs do you have? And they list them all off. He goes, don't you have any songs about something you want to do? He's like,
Right.
yeah, we've got one that says, I want to sniff some glue.
That's right.
I don't know. I haven't looked it up.
That movie
It's
was
an
horrible.
easy Google. If they just had a device that I could look things up quickly and get the facts right.
I feel like if I was a teenager and I didn't know anything about punk, I'd be like, that's a cool movie. But reading
And you
something...
liked Harry Potter.
Yes, which I don't. No, I like Harry Potter. I don't get it.
Did you read the books as a kid?
I wasn't a kid when they came out.
No, yeah. See, I read the books basically as they came out in America, as I was the
I think
same
the books
age
are
as
okay.
Harry Potter.
Sure.
So it was perfect.
But when you read Please Kill Me, there's so many great things in there. And then you watch the CBGB movie, it's so disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want all of it, and you only get some.
If they could put this in a movie, all these great parts, I think the masses would enjoy. I mean, it is disgusting,
Yeah.
but I think it would reach people that don't listen to punk. Because
Well, because
the
it's
story's
human
so
reality.
intriguing.
We were talking about, seeing New York at its worst, but we also got to see Detroit in its failure.
That's what I was trying to get at when we were talking about the Detroit scenes in the book. They're just all kind of working class. They're not going anywhere. You know, they have nothing to do except for playing bands and
Yeah.
like cars. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really into cars.
There's a really cool scene in Detroit, which I've never experienced in Portland. There's just something, it's dirtier, it's rawer, it's different. I've never met groups of bands like I met in Detroit.
Yeah, it's special. It's a special place for rock.
Yeah, it's authentic.
Yeah.
It is weird because
Rawness.
there's a ton of bands here, and there's a lot of good bands, but the percentage of good bands is so small.
Everybody and their mom has a band in Portland.
Yeah, everyone you know is in a band or plays guitar. This is another quote that I like from Dee Dee Ramone, and then it goes to Danny Fields after that. Nancy, is it Spungen?
I don't know. Not sure.
Spungen? Springen?
Never was sure about that.
Sounding? Nancy used to live on 23rd Street. I was with her one night, and Connie came there and found me in bed with Nancy. So Connie stabbed me because I was fucking Nancy. But Connie didn't give a shit because she just stole Nancy's collection of silver dollars and sold them to get some dope. Connie just said, let's go get high. I said, all right. So we left Nancy there. And then Danny Field said... I love the drama between Dee Dee and Connie. That's what boys and girls are supposed to do. Stab each other, sure. I mean, you're not supposed to die, but short of dying or missing a gig, it's all right.
Right? Make the gig.
Make the gig. Get the dope. Make the gig.
Yep.
That drama is normal. That has always bothered me. I thought you're supposed to go home to get comfortable and hide from all the horribleness, not go home and get your bass thumb cut up so you can't play.
Isn't that supposed to be the material that art is made from, though? That kind of myth that you have to be tortured.
Right.
Yeah.
Tortured artist.
I made my best art when I was like 8 years old and happy.
Yeah, but
so.
you were on drugs.
I was on drugs, right? Shoot.
You were on speed.
Did you write a song about it exploding duck dick then?
No, I just drew pictures.
Did you
of
know
birds
about
and-
exploding duck dicks
Mommy,
when you
I
were
wrote
8?
a song about exploding duck dick.
Has anybody seen Danny Says?
What is that?
Documentary about Danny Fields?
No, I'd never heard of Danny Fields till I read this book.
It's on Netflix, yeah? It's got the red cover.
It's really good.
I've been meaning to watch that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. But reading this book, to me, cemented my feelings about Jim Morrison versus Iggy Pop. And I have a friend who is a little bit older, and she worships Jim Morrison,
Fuck
thinks
Jim
he's
Morrison.
the greatest poet and all this. And
He's not a
somebody in the
poet.
book says, it's like adolescent tripe. And, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, Jim Morrison? Iggy Pop, right? I mean, it's the same concept, but one is real, and
Yeah.
one is a total charlatan. Surfer, poet, got lucky.
Frat boy.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
Jim Morrison
Yeah.
wasn't attractive, he wouldn't have been near as popular. And if he wouldn't have died, he wouldn't have been near as popular.
Yeah.
When I was younger, we were listening to The Doors or something. My dad mentioned, oh, he's a great poet. Because he did poetry, and
Yeah.
stuff my dad listened to was mostly very macho rock from the 70s. But Jim, somehow, he was macho apparently and did poetry, so my dad considered him a poet, but he's not a poet.
Yeah.
He was a decent singer. He was a decent songwriter. He was an amazing performer, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
But Iggy Pop, to me, is on a totally different level. I've told you guys this. I saw Iggy last year. In the last year, he's like 70. He's still fucking all over the place. He was just all over the stage. It was one of the most magical shows I've seen in the last few years.
Was that the Josh Homme, or was that Stooges?
No, I don't think it was Stooges. He just did all the hits.
Okay.
So he did Stooges. He did solo stuff. I think he did one song from that album, which I haven't heard. I heard it's good.
Yeah, I haven't heard it either.
I think maybe the blood sport wouldn't have been quite so entertaining if this was post-AIDS. The rolling around on broken glass and splattering blood all over everybody. And there was a lot about this book that was immediately horrifying to me because of AIDS. And then I had to think about it. Well, AIDS hadn't happened yet, or it wasn't happening to the extent that we now know how dangerous this stuff is, with the sharing needles and the fucking everybody, boy, girl, or whatever, and all the holes and without protection and
Raw dogging and barebacking.
raw dogging it.
No internet.
And then like having open wounds on your dick, and you're still fucking people, and then
All the
rolling
bloody
around on broken glass.
Flesh bridges.
Just like to look at that on the internet now.
Yeah.
Fun.
We don't want to
All the
like
bloody
do
fun
that
bridges.
stuff. We just want to be like, let's look
All
at
the
that on the
bloody,
internet.
all
Right.
the blood.
Someone should do that so I can jack off.
Yeah. I don't want to do it because I don't want to get AIDS.
I was at a concert one time. I forget who it was. And in between bands, this guy was talking to the guy next to him about how the Doors were basically the West Coast version of Velvet Underground.
What?
Did the same thing. I was like, I'd never thought about that. But he was talking about how they came out at the same time. They were both talking about drugs and kind of writing similar.
I wonder if they had heard the VU.
Yeah.
I wonder how much the Doors had heard VU when they were starting their band up.
Right.
Well, Jim Morrison did hang out at the factory.
Right.
And he did sleep
after
with
he was famous, though.
Nico, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that Jim Morrison shat on a plate on
Lou Reed's face. Oh, yeah.
That's the connection, huh?
Yeah.
With Andy Warhol there.
That's right.
Connection.
Clearly, he was.
I think Joey
influenced.
Shithead shit on.
No, he had Jim Morrison in a headlock when Jim Morrison was shitting on a plate.
And David Lee Roth had an exploding dick.
That's right.
With barbs on it.
With barbs.
While they were all on Adderall and heroin.
I was curious, Deb. You've both
No,
read
I don't have
the
AIDS.
book, but you don't have AIDS, so.
No, I don't have AIDS.
You read the book before, right?
Nope. This is my virginal voyage. I have read all of these stories, just not in this presentation.
Maybe I'm being presumptuous, but Deb, did you not know a lot?
I did not know most of this.
Okay.
No, I mean, I've heard little bits and pieces, but none of the stories that I read here were things that I'd heard before.
So I was curious if you thought it was at least entertaining. Obviously, these
yeah.
people aren't good
No,
people
I mean,
per se.
I was constantly stopping and yelling something out to Joe that I'd read. And I'm like, these aren't role models.
For what? They're role models for performers.
Yeah.
They're role models for the English punks.
Yeah.
There was a lot in it that surprised me, and not like the debaucherous behavior didn't surprise me so much. I mean, that's known. But things like early on in the book, somebody's talking about wearing Nazi regalia.
That, to me, that was weird, too.
Dead
and
Boys.
then Danny Fields was, like, defending that as okay.
He wrote a piece on it.
Yeah, I'm a Jew, but
Dead Boys.
that's fine if you like that stuff because it's pretty.
The guy from the Stooges had a Nazi collection.
Yeah,
right.
Ashton.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And I know that it was just for shock. Maybe it was neat, maybe it was pretty, but they weren't actually racist. They didn't actually want to exterminate a third of the population. They didn't actually believe in Hitler's ideas, but it was shocky, it was neat looking. And to me, that kind of disregard for that much suffering is just so shitty that I'm having a hard time accepting that person at all after they've done that kind of thing. So there were some things like that, like fucking a 13-year-old, wearing a Nazi outfit. Those are both things that I'm not ever going to be able to respect that person afterwards.
You're not dialing up fucking a 13-year-old in NaziOutfit.com.
No.
Is that a website?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Shall I Google it?
What is that rule
that freedom?
34
We're talking
where
about
if it
freedom
exists, then it exists as porn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Nazi thing, I totally agree with you. But when I read that, I think of when I was 13, 14, I had some weird art project where you use like strings and you poke the holes in and you make designs. I forget what that's called. There's a name for it.
Origami?
Siphoning.
It's spooning. I mean, sounding. Gooning? Goonies?
The Goonies.
Definitely sounding.
Oh, that's what I keep saying. Siphoning, but it's sounding. It's when you're jamming shit in your urethra.
What's siphoning? That's what you meant, sounding? Yes. You just
Siphoning is when you put a hose into a gas tank and then you suck it. So I'm assuming that would be the same thing as if you stuff something in your urethra.
Yeah, that is. You stick a straw into the urethra and then you suck out the semen.
Suck the semen straight from the testicles. It's fresher that way.
Yeah.
it's so much fresher.
It has a different texture.
It doesn't. It hasn't had time to congeal or mix with the air at all.
So I get it. You were using the siphoning because you know that
sounding
hurts
freaks
me
you out.
too much. Yes,
I was trying to get to your core and I totally fucked it up. Because it's the only Robert Mapplethorpe stuff I'd seen until I read this book and Googled it was his pictures, which was someone's thumb jammed all the way to the second knuckle into their penis or someone else's penis.
Joe
it's
looks
not
up
clear
from his phone.
to me.
I just want to see how far the thumb was in.
Yeah. Second knuckle.
He was a true artist.
He was.
I hope he trimmed his fingernail first.
I hope so too. And we had determined after we saw that picture that's probably good for volume, but it probably is a problem for your distance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I was saying about the swastika.
The look on your face.
I was just thinking about this, like, saggy, like, urethra that never goes down to normal size again.
Your furrowed brow and frowny face was so perfect there, Deb.
Maybe you could try it with Joe tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think my thumb would fit. I think we have to work up to that.
Siphoning, sounding, whatever. Jamming shit in the urethra.
I'll give you $30, Joe, if you do it. $30.
And if you can get your second knuckle into Debbie, your urethra, then that's even more impressive.
All right, I can't talk. I'm getting nauseous now.
We're going to have to cut this podcast short because of Skidmore talking about sounding.
I'm going to puke on this microphone. No, so this sounds crazy, and I'm really embarrassed to say it, but when I was like 13, 14, I put a hidden swastika in this piece of art I was doing, and it was very subtle. You couldn't tell it. They had every student's on the wall, and they took mine off, and I overheard that it was because that kind of looks like a swastika. I knew about World War II. I knew about Nazis and Jews, but I was around people that were very religious and uptight about everything, and it was just part of rebelling.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing to say now because it's so stupid. Mm-hmm. And obviously they're older.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel it is maybe similar to that.
Yeah.
But I also agree with you.
There's a difference between
Isn't it shock value?
An art project that you're, being silly and hiding something in that you find funny, or, middle schoolers carving a swastika into their desk when they're in detention or something like that, as opposed to the extent of full outfits and things. One of the English princes was caught at a Halloween party dressed as, not necessarily dressed as Hitler, he was wearing an SS uniform.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was Harry.
Yeah,
Prince
and
Harry.
he apologized profusely for it. He was saying that the point was to shock, and they thought it was funny, and they didn't realize how offensive it was.
Well, Baby It's Cold Outside is now banned on radio stations.
That song.
What's Baby It's Cold Outside?
It's a classic Christmas song that this guy wrote for parties that he and his wife were going to, and it's been in movies, countless movies. Dean Martin has sung it, and it's supposedly rapey, and so radio stations are banning it because there are requests to ban it from people who are traumatized by the content. But with the sex with the 14-year-olds and the Nazi uniforms, if it's consensual, I have no problem with that. Mm-hmm. When people start to ban stuff and are just like, you can't listen to this anymore, you can't wear this anymore.
Can we just ban all Christmas music?
Yeah. I'm a little on the side of not playing Baby It's Cold Outside on the radio, but I still feel like it's one of those classic Christmas songs that shouldn't be gone. So there's a couple of lines where it's like she's trying to leave and he's trying to tell her not to leave. And one of the lines is that she drinks something and she asks what's in the drink, and he tells her not to worry about it.
From the 1950s.
It's not really rapey. It's just that it really is cold outside. He's trying to convince her, hey, hang out with me for a little bit longer. And she's like, I really should go, but I'm not gonna. It's not a no. It's a, I should, but I really would rather stay here and hang out with you.
She thinks that it could be like Coca-Cola or whatever, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it.
No, it's a little bit stronger.
He's like, you're just a lady.
Cocktail.
Don't worry about it. I made your cocktail. Yeah.
It's a stronger cocktail than she had expected.
It's not a roofie.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not
she's
the
not getting
implication.
roofied. She's not getting raped, but she does indicate she wants to leave, and he's encouraging her not.
So do people know the second part of that song where they stay and she rapes him and then cuts his dick off?
Yeah, they don't talk about that part. Just like in I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas, they always cut out the beginning where they're singing about how it's not that it doesn't snow anymore where he lives. It's that he lives in L.A. now, but they always cut that part out. It starts out, the sun is shining, the grass is green. No, it's all about racism, yeah.
So there's this Patti Smith quote. It's very detailed, and it sounds like some bullshit she would make up, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So she says, I was working in a factory, and I was inspecting baby buggy bumper beepers, and it was my lunch break. This guy would come around with this little cart that had these genius sausage sandwiches in it, and I really wanted one. They were like $1.45. I really wanted one, but the thing was the guy only brought 2 a day. And the 2 ladies who ruled the factory, Stella Dragging and Dottie Hook, took those sausage sandwiches. So there was nothing else I wanted. You get obsessed with certain tastes. My mouth was really dying for this hot sausage sandwich, so I was real depressed.
I remember reading this and thinking it was bullshit too.
Yeah, across the railroad tracks to this little bookstore, I was roaming around there looking for something to read, and I saw Illuminations. It goes on saying other stuff, but did you really remember these details from...
Okay, the names of both of the ladies, ridiculous. The price that she remembers of the sausage sandwich, way overpriced for a fucking sausage sandwich that you're buying in a...
2 sandwiches.
Who brings
and
2
sells
sandwiches?
Them?
That's a Portland thing.
Yeah,
I'm building
scarcity.
my business on making 2 sandwiches.
And then on top of it, if these 2 women always take them, how has she ever had one? And rubber baby buggy beepers?
Right.
What's
that's
a
too
beeper?
perfect.
Why do you need it to beep? Exactly.
Have you guys ever looked up the cover of Illuminations by Rimbaud?
No.
She talks in that passage about how the cover was what drew her, and you can kind of see how she built that into her mythology. And also, Rimbaud is this French symbolist poet who was lovers with Verlaine. And so Verlaine from television took his name from the Verlaine-Rimbaud relationship.
Interesting.
So it's all about these French symbolist poets.
Does Rimbaud have big tits?
He's pretty slight, so no.
Big tits for a heroin addict.
Does he like sounding?
Or
He
siphoning.
was a drug addict, definitely. He was a street urchin. He was like the Jim Carroll of France in the late 19th century.
Who do you like more, Jim Carrey or Jim Carroll?
Carroll.
Or Steve Carell.
Christmas carols or...
Carroll the...
You know, when you Google sounding, you don't get that definition. There's a lot. Wait, hold on. Medicine, examining a person's bladder or other internal cavity with a long surgical probe. I found it.
Ta-da!
So if I had to choose who I thought
Death
was...
by sounding.
Oh my God. Ew, Joe.
If I had to choose one of you to sound me...
He showed me pictures.
Of Mapplethorpe.
He showed me pictures of a naughty place.
I love the Mapple.
You said you couldn't find
Stuff's
it on the
awesome.
internet. It's
No.
literally the subreddit is called Sound.
No, I didn't need to see pictures. I just wanted to see if I could search sounding and if it would actually tell me what it was or if it was something I'd have to dig into Urban Dictionary to get an honest answer on.
I like the fact you looked at Urban Dictionary for honest answers.
They always do. Some 13-year-old, some honest.
I love all the options. I like going to Urban Dictionary because you can pick and choose which definitions you choose to subscribe to.
Urban Dick.
Urban Dick, yeah. For those sounding pictures.
If I had to choose who I thought was the most attractive from this book, I would vote Bebe Buell. She sounds annoying to me.
Mm-hmm. She likes Stiv, rat face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the rat guy. There's the rat guy again. She was with Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
And then he was going out of town, and then Iggy showed up at the door. Remember, he tricked her into giving her the address, and then he went by the house the day that Todd Rundgren was leaving.
Oh, yeah.
The magic of Iggy. He's the Midwestern Dee. I don't know who I would think is the most attractive in here. To me, might be...
From reading these words?
I think it's Lenny Kaye.
Who?
Lenny Kaye.
All right.
From the New York Dolls.
Yeah, I was thinking it was one of the dolls as well.
It's gotta be.
They are hot. When you were mentioning, Dave, you were mentioning Patti Smith earlier about how she didn't really seem part of the scene. I think the best way to look at that is when Joey Ramone and Richard Hell talk about her. So he says, I saw Patti at Kinney's Castaways really early on. She was reading poetry, and every time she'd read a poem, she scrunched up the paper in a ball and threw it on the floor. Or she'd be reading something, and she'd pick up a chair and throw it across the room, smash it into a wall or something.
Love that scene.
I thought it was great. I never knew anything about her, but I was real impressed. And then Richard Hell says, I went to see Patti read when she used to play these gay clubs, like whatever, and they would just go nuts for her. That amazed me. This crowd turned out for this girl doing poetry. It does sound intriguing. I've been to a lot of poetry, and I think 99% of the time it's one of the most painful performances I've gone through. And to hear punk rockers talking about how it's just so intriguing, and I mean, it sounds almost like experimental theater mixed with poetry. You're just watching a crazy person.
Well, I think that Richard Hell was like that, experimental theater, meets music. But I mean, I agree with you about poetry readings, and I see my share as well. And I think any time that you can introduce the element of maybe perceived danger into a poetry reading, it's just like, fuck yeah. I mean, poetry readings, you're sitting there, you're just like, yeah, oh yeah.
That's a good point.
But a chair against the wall? Or
if you're looking for
the
safest place in town, it is at a poetry reading.
I mean, danger at a poetry reading is brilliant. It's,
When there's a hurricane, head to a poetry reading, because that is...
Stop, drop, and go to the poetry reading.
Can you just see, these are like Greenwich Village beatniks, and Patti Smith is throwing chairs at a poetry reading. They're just like, whoa.
You know what's funny?
How cool.
I, for some reason, have always confused Richard Hell and Johnny Thunders. I've rarely literally seen pictures of them, and I had this mix that had some Richard Hell stuff, and then it had, I think, Johnny Thunders does Born to Lose, which is a great song. I always thought that was Richard Hell.
Ray Charles does that song too.
Yeah.
Same title, but totally different lyrics, right?
Did Richard Hell never do that song?
Huh?
I think that's Johnny Thunders.
I know the Pistols did that. I think Johnny wrote it. Chinese Rocks, Dee Dee wrote and Johnny made famous.
Yeah.
I know it's on Sid Lives, that record Sid Lives, Sid's solo record.
Oh, God.
Have you ever heard that?
I don't know.
Sid Lives. It's a picture of
I don't
him
think
on the
so.
front. He's got the chain with the padlock on. He's shirtless, and he's got maybe a swastika carved in his chest. And it came out when he was still alive. And he sings My Way, Born to Lose, a bunch of other Eddie Cochran tunes. I mean, it's really terrible. It's horrible.
I had a boss one time that knew I liked music, and we just really didn't connect on anything, so she was asking me about the song Born to Lose, and I had totally forgotten that Ray Charles had that song, and a lot of people have done it. And I was like, does she really know about Born to Lose? This song? And we started talking about it, and then I realized, oh, you're talking about a different song.
Okay, yeah.
And that's a cover that Ray Charles does. It's on his country and western album. It's
The
not
red
his
one.
song.
Yeah, most of his songs aren't.
It was definitely an early song that I learned on bass.
Born to Lose.
The Johnny Thunders version.
Yeah.
Definitely
Born
an early
to
song
Lose.
I learned on guitar. The Ray Charles version.
Yeah.
Born too loose. How do you fix that?
I think that's a Johnny
Vaginal
Thunders
rejuvenation
album.
surgery?
Too loose. Yeah. Vaginal decay surgery.
I know somebody who had vaginal rejuvenation surgery, actually. Yep. She tore from her V to her A when she was having a baby.
That happens.
And they had to go in like 3 years later and do reconstructive surgery.
Yeah, if you look in the back of Sky Magazine on Delta Airlines, it lists the top 10 plastic surgeons, and one of them is vaginal beautification. And I just thought, does that really need surgery? I mean, entire wars have been fought over that piece of anatomy. Before there was baths. So I don't think it has to be that beautiful.
Yeah, maybe you should just turn the lights off if you're really that worried.
And plug the nose.
Surgery isn't going to fix that.
I don't think we've mentioned this time, but I have to mention it just in case, because you mentioned this story a lot. So
You're going to Iggy's dick.
I want to go to Iggy back. I got some Iggy too, yeah.
Not that one, but I've been looking for that. But the first time I went to CBGB's was with Wayne County. There were 6 people in the audience. We ate the chili, which was years later.
I love this story.
Bebe Buell was horrified to learn. She said, "You ate the chili? Steve told me the Dead Boys used to go in the back in the kitchen and jerk off in it." I said to her, "So what? I've had worse in my mouth."
That to me is the best response.
Yeah, how
to
else
the
are you
fact
gonna
that
handle
someone
it?
else was jerking off in it, because it's just like, so
I
I like
already ate
people
it.
to shit in my mouth.
They're so flippant
I
about
hung out
shit
with
like
Lou
that in the book.
Reed. Yeah, I just thought that
They're
was
just
great.
like, hey,
It's just
whatever.
Like, so what?
I've had a lot of shit in my mouth.
And that goes back to that book you gave me, that Tom Horacek book, where there's a guy sitting there with a bowl of soup and a salad, and he's looking at the waiter with this frowny face holding a fly on his spoon. And the waiter says, "Dude, I would be way more concerned about the phlegm in your salad."
Like that scene out of Waiting where they've got the bitch.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, so they decorate up her food. They start by dropping her steak on the floor.
They pull sneaky.
They pull some pubes for a garnish. They drop it on the floor and they're like, "Oh, some extra seasoning and garnish," when they're putting pubes on it. And then one of the guys starts to try and hack a loogie, and he's, "Hey, and some guacamole." And he starts to try and hack it up, and somebody stops and he's like, "No, you can't mix Mexican with continental. I thought you were better than that." It's the best scene from the whole movie. I think they rub a piece of bread on their balls or something too. Missing something? Garlic salt from scratching his head. That's
hysterically
right.
when I read that response. I just thought that was the best response to potential semen in your soup.
Yeah, well, I mean, how else are you going to handle it? You already swallowed it. It was years ago. Gotta just
so
accept
what?
it. Don't freak out.
I mean, and chowder, isn't that all? Seminal fluid?
It's creamy.
We didn't follow this sequentially even slightly, did we? We didn't start at the beginning and end at
That's
chapter
okay.
3.
I'm not worried about that. There's so many things in here, but I think we talked about most of the highlights, I would say.
Earlier when you were going, we didn't talk about this, and you jumped to something, I thought you were going to talk about Iggy's dick, because
You love it.
I do. I love in his.
So that's why you became a musician.
Because of
his
Iggy's dick.
That's why you became And that's why you decided to do the podcast.
Indeed, so I can only talk about that. After this, I'm going to retire.
Isn't that why you became an engineer, too?
Indeed. I was going to, yeah. Because in his autobiography, he gives not only length and circumference, he also talks about angles. And then everyone in this book talks about Iggy's dick. It's like, well, he was really well endowed. He'd rub it on the speakers and you could see it.
Just put it on there.
Oh, man, I love that. When he would set it on the speaker and watch it vibrate.
Set it?
Yeah.
Just leave it there and go back to it.
Well, it was so big you could walk away.
Just leave it. Detachable piece.
I'm going to have some sushi now.
Yeah.
It leaves a lot to the imagination when he talks about just setting it up.
I always thought that was bullshit, and I saw him in Cincinnati, and it's like the first he comes out shirtless. He's got his Levi's 501 5-button thing, whips that out, and he starts swinging that around, and it was just longer than my forearm.
Was it like a horse?
Maybe.
Like a
Didn't
small
you say
horse?
it was like 2 feet?
By the time you're spinning it, so the centrifugal force makes it longer.
He was helicoptering?
He was totally helicoptering that baby. But there was some point in there where Iggy's like, somebody just wants to suck his dick, a guy. And he's like, man, just lick my stomach. Like, he's so sick of people sucking his dick.
Right, yeah.
I'm just so sick of these people sucking my dick. I want him just to lick my stomach.
That's so funny.
The guy was like, hey, that was pretty great.
Which begs the question, do you think Iggy would have been popular if he had a really tiny penis?
Maybe he wouldn't have been as cocky.
Because it obviously made him more forgivable for all the shit he did. Because people still, if I did that, people wouldn't be sucking my dick.
Would his penis look as big as if he was 5'8"? I mean, he's what, 4'9"?
So
really
his
penis.
Is he 4'9"?
No, he's like a banana slug. Banana slugs that's the largest penis to body ratio in the animal kingdom.
How tall is he?
5'1", based on his song.
Is he really?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. That's a song. I'm only 5'1". I have no idea. If there were only a device.
Man, my brother's 5'2".
We could
That
only
is
look
short.
it up on some machine.
It's funny in the book when Iggy gets married and brings his bride to the funhouse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I felt so bad
It's like this
for her.
bro house, and
He's
all of a sudden
5'7". He's not even
is he?
short.
Oh, okay.
I'm taller than him.
He brings her to the fun house, and she just stays up in the room the whole time. And then after a month, he's like, "This isn't working out." They all took bets on how long it would last. And
I felt so bad for her because she actually wanted it to work, and
Right.
he didn't care.
what was he
She
doing?
was doomed. Because what? She
Yeah.
was 17.
And everyone was calling her Potato Girl.
Yeah, potato
Totally
girl.
cracked me up because
She had a nice body, but her face looked like a potato.
in high school there was this guy Lamity, and we called him Potato Man. His face looked like a potato.
Well, and her parents wouldn't even acknowledge the wedding. She probably had to go home in shame. I just feel bad
Mrs.
for
Pop.
her.
To put it in perspective, we're talking about people who live on the side of the road in Portland. To her parents, Iggy was like that.
Yeah.
Homeless, degenerate,
Yeah, he was
derelict,
In a house with a million other people and rolling around on broken glass and shitting in people's mouths.
Jim Osterberg. Newell. His middle name is Newell.
Is the word thalidomide? Thalidomide?
Thalidomide?
Thalidomide?
Thalidomide. That's a drug.
He used thalidomide babies and Siamese triplets joined together at the asshole. One actor had this huge paper mache prop of a big cock coming out of his shorts down to his knees. He also couldn't control his bowel movement, so shit was dripping down his legs the whole time, and everyone loved it. People love that kind of visually confrontational theater.
See, I don't want
I do.
poop on stage.
Yeah,
I don't need that.
I've never
Where
seen
do you
poop
want
on
poop?
stage.
In the toilet.
What if there was toilets on stage?
Then they can poop in the toilet. That's okay.
Could they do sounding on the toilet
No.
on stage?
Well, yeah, they could. They could. It's not my dick.
Prove it.
No, people can do whatever they want to their bodies, but just don't do it in front of me or on me, maybe near me.
Depends on how far they can shoot, I suppose. What kind of distance do you have?
If you have the sounding rod in and then you peed, would it shoot out? I don't know. Oh, Scott's gonna pass out.
Yeah. Should we leave it there, Scott? Parts 1 through 3.
All right.
Heroin,
I'm gonna go throw up.
14-year-olds, sounding.
I'm going to throw up. See you next time.
Deal.
I'm actually pretty psyched to talk about next time the punks go to England. It's great.
It's like punk rock goes to England and it comes back in a totally different way, and they're just like, fuck that, I'm done.
Goodbye. See you later. Gotta see you go, 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 go. Goodbye. See you around. The bin. The farewell bin.
I just we go boom boom in your panties.
Did you say our top story is we go boom boom in our panties?
Fuck that. I'm done.